Chapter 1062. The Coiling Dragon Tablet. It represented the amount of luck of the great way a talent could obtain. It was difficult to climb a mountain, and even more difficult to guard it. Standing on the altar meant that one might be challenged by other talents at any time. Moreover, this kind of challenge was not limited to one time. The battle would not stop until the end of 30 minutes. Lin Sun's gaze carefully stared at the coiling dragon tablet for a long time. The killing intent, fighting spirit, rage, lofty sentiments that had accumulated in his heart mixed together, causing the battle intent in his heart to soar and boil. This was just the ranking of junior giant. Since he came here, there was only one goal, the first place, because the first place of the ranking of junior giants could not only obtain more luck of the great way, but also an extra reward of entering the immortal secret realm. The magical function of the immortal secret realm was very simple. It reversed the time rule. 1 year in the immortal secret realm was only 1 day in the outside world. Even the sages who had stepped into the divine path could only look up to such a method, but they couldn't do it, because the law of time was the highest law in the world. It was too high and incredible. Even the sages could only sigh with emotion. Time is like this, and nothing can be changed. For Lin Sun, time was undoubtedly the most urgent thing he needed. Because he already knew that the gap between him and Yunqi Bai was the precipitation of time. "I'm going to be the first," Lin Sun murmured in his heart. His eyebrows were calm, and his head was full of determination. Then, he looked down at the mountain road below. From a distance, he could see that many figures were approaching the top of the mountain like a long snake. There were so many people that the golden road of 15 meters wide was filled with them. They had a surprising tacit understanding. There was no competition or killing, because they had all formed an alliance, and their primary target was Lin Sun. Lin Sun stood silently with his hands behind his back. His moon-white clothes were fluttering in the wind. Clouds and mist surrounded him, making his figure seem otherworldly and otherworldly. His black eyes were deep and cold, full of indifference. "Demon Lin, I'll give you a chance. Jump down from this mountain, and we won't embarrass you anymore. You don't have to suffer physical pain." The people of Heaven's pivot Holy Land came up and looked at Lin Sun, who stood alone on the platform. Their faces were full of ridicule and awe. Didn't Xue Qianhen and Zhang Zheng learn their lesson when they were crippled? Lin Sun said indifferently. His words caused the other party's expression to instantly turn gloomy and extremely livid. "Jump? Wouldn't that be letting him off too easily? Even though I can't kill him completely on the undying sacred mountain, I still want to kill him 1 slash at a time." In just a moment, the successor of the Heavenly Sword sect had also arrived. The one who had spoken was Ant Shooting Sword Kong Ling. She was a descendant of the Peacock bloodline. She wore a fiery red dress and her eyes were filled with hatred. Back then, Yunqingbai's Night Flower sword had been snatched from her hands by Lin Sun. This made her furious and ashamed. "A loser dares to clamor. I'll pluck off all your feathers later." Lin Sun sneered with an indulgent look, as if no one else was present. "You're courting death." Kong Ling's eyes were spitting fire. "Demon God Lin, you've seen the current situation. If you don't want to lose too badly, get down from the platform. Get down." At this time, the holy land of Lingbao, the pure land of longevity, the Taoist sect of Vast Sea, the Black Sea Dog tribe and other talents arrived one after another. They gathered there densely, pointing at Lin Sun and clamoring. Their expressions were either filled with hatred or killing intent. "Do you think you have nothing to fear just because you have more people? You're all the so-called successors of the ancient orthodoxies. What a disgrace." Lin Sun's black eyes were cold and his voice resounded through the clouds like a big bell. "I'm not in the mood to talk nonsense with you. If you're not convinced, just come up." His figure was peerless, overlooking the crowd. His words were calm, but there was a sense of disdain for the world. His voice rumbled up and down the ninth peak, stirring up the wind and clouds. At the foot of the mountain, the strong practitioners of the Wind Whisperer tribe, who had been paying attention to the battle for a long time, had their eyes lit up. They took out the golden message tree leaf they had prepared and recorded the scene without missing a single detail. At the top of the mountain, the crowd was furious and their faces were gloomy. They had thought that demon god Lin would at least be a little afraid of him. Who would have thought that Lin Sun was still so unscrupulous and bold? Ho ho, you're really a reckless madman. How dare you say such big words by yourself? A person sneered disdainfully. Boom. On the Taoist platform, Lin Sun pressed his palm and a palm print appeared in the void, pressing down across the air. The crowd only felt a blur in front of their eyes. The palm print was like a monstrous sun, dazzling to the extreme, and its speed was unparalleled. Ah, that person screamed. He also took out his treasures to block and tried his best to avoid it, but it was useless. This was a talent with the strength of the fulfillment of the reincarnation developing realm, and he was also a successor disciple of an ancient orthodoxy. But at this time, he was killed by the palm print like a piece of grass. Puff! His body exploded, and a rain of blood splattered. Lin Sun's attack was absolutely overbearing and unparalleled. In the blink of an eye, he killed a genius of an ancient orthodoxy. This bloody scene immediately shocked everyone. At this time, Lin Sun still stood on the Taoist platform, his clothes fluttering, his black eyes cold, and his breath pure and ethereal, as if he had never made a move. Everyone's expression changed. Some were angry and some were afraid. Everyone, let's kill this bastard together. Seeing that Lin Sun had taken the lead and affected everyone's morale, a successor of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land stood out without hesitation. It was a barefooted young man in hemp garments. Before he could finish speaking, before his voice died away, he leaped into the air and took out a jade ruler. It was like a blue lightning, illuminating eternity. This jade ruler was fierce and fierce. It was obviously a terrifying supreme weapon of kingcraft, and its power was not limited by the rules and order of the immortal mountain. Clang! Kong Ling of the sky-reaching sword sect also attacked. He took out the Gusha sword, and a dazzling sword chi of hundreds of meters long gushed out. Whether it was the young man in linen or Kong Ling, they were all influential figures who had set foot on the top of the world. At this moment, their attacks seemed incomparably powerful. Seeing this, the other powerhouses who were hesitant also attacked from all directions towards Lin Sun in the center of the Taoist platform. This was not an arena battle, and there was no fairness to speak of. Standing on the Taoist platform, one was bound to be besieged and attacked by group. Clang! Lin Sun's body was surrounded by endless green divine light, which surged up and down like a vast ocean, illuminated the void, and blocked the jade ruler. At the same time, a Swanee seal was condensed, and it emitted the divine power to suppress the universe. It met the bright sword chi head-on. Kill! The battle was completely ignited at this moment, and the curtains were drawn. A group of geniuses from different ancient orthodoxies rushed to the Taoist platform with shocking momentum and boundless terror. But Lin Sun did not retreat half a step. Instead, he took the initiative to fight with them. Since entering the immortal Forbidden Land, he had been targeted everywhere along the way, and it seemed that they wanted to kill him. Until he ascended the mountain, the dignified successors of ancient orthodoxies shamelessly joined forces to deal with him. How could Lin Sun bear it? A group of clowns had repeatedly offended him. If he didn't completely suppress their arrogance, how could he pursue the Tao in the future? As Zhao Jingxian had guessed before, Lin Sun had already made up his mind to kill this time. If he didn't do so, he wouldn't be able to vent his inner anger. Kill! Lin Sun's cold eyes flashed, and his figure shone dazzlingly, like a green sun moving horizontally, illuminating the mountains and rivers. Boom! The Upanishad of 9 strikes for shaking heaven ran wantonly, and a series of punches burst out, like the fists of gods and demons, which could break the sky. With a bang, Kong Ling's Gusha sword was shaken away, and her delicate body trembled, and almost fell out of the Taoist platform. On the other side, the jade ruler of the young man in linen was stepped on by Lin Sun. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. Puff, puff. At this time, with the burst of Lin Sun's terrible fist power that was enough to shake the heaven and earth, the talents who were close to him had no time to dodge. Their bodies exploded like fireworks, and blood rain poured down and dyed the void red. At the foot of the mountain, there was a commotion and uproar. With the opening of the ranking of junior giants, the geniuses who were qualified to participate in the competition had already taken action, leaving only some legendary figures, squires, and old servants at the foot of the mountain. When they noticed this scene, they couldn't help but be surprised, and their expressions changed suddenly. The successors of those ancient orthodoxies were all the top figures among their peers, like the blazing sun. Now they gathered together and aimed at Lin Sun. How terrible their power was! But the result was that Lin Sun blocked them calmly and started a massacre. He was as powerful as a demon, and he dominated the Taoist platform. Go to hell! Lin Sun's palm and fingers expanded, and a burning galaxy spread out in the void, burning the sky and destroying the earth, violent and amazing. The peerless Taoist method, fire refining galaxy. Under the control of the power of fire at the level of Taoist truth, as soon as this Taoist method was displayed, it seemed that there were burning stars exploding on the Taoist platform. The terrible power of destruction swallowed more than a dozen geniuses on the spot, making them scream miserably. Bastard, how dare you! The young man in linen was furious, and his jade ruler shone brilliantly, splashing thousands of lightning arcs, and shrouding Lin Sun. Get lost! Lin Sun, who was fighting freely, didn't even look back. A phantom of a divine beast emerged from his back, and then it soared into the air. In an instant, the young man in linen and the jade ruler in his hand were knocked away, and the sound of bones breaking came from his body, which made him spew blood from his mouth and nose, and almost die. Boom! At this time, Lin Sun's fist strength was like a dragon, whistling through the universe, and met the successor of the Pure Land of Longevity. His fist intent was invincible, majestic, and boundless, and shook the enemies in all directions. At the foot of the mountain, the legendary figures and servants of various orthodoxies were all trembling. For most of them, it was the first time for them to see Lin Sun fight. They thought that a peerless figure, no matter how strong he was doomed to be killed when he was besieged. But who would have thought that Demon Lin was far stronger and more terrible than the rumor said? Chapter 1063. Boom! The Jade Ruler was sent flying again, wailing incessantly. Lin Sun was like a demon. As he raised his hand, his fist force broke the void and blasted out a powerful punch. Ah! The youth in linen screamed. This top-core disciple of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land was defeated by Lin Sun after several exchanges. He was seriously injured and on the verge of death, coughing up blood. But his expression was still resolute and he roared resentfully, "Demon Lin, on this immortal mountain, we are immortal. No matter how strong you are, you will eventually be exhausted." Boom! Lin Sun's fist force swept across and cracked his body. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun punched again. The void shattered and the youth in linen exploded, disappearing from where he was. "You outnumber me and threaten me with death. Trash like this deserves to be called a top talent?" Lin Sun's expression was cold, his black eyes merciless. He turned around and stared at Kong Ling. "Quick! Let's attack together and kill this demon!" Kong Ling screamed. Lin Sun's strength chilled her heart and impacted her fighting spirit. The youth in linen was the first top talent to be eliminated since the start of the battle. This was nothing. What was frightening was that he was no match for Lin Sun, who was also a top talent. The hearts of the geniuses from the other orthodoxies were also impacted. It had only been a short while since the start of the battle, but more than 20 geniuses had already been killed. Although they wouldn't really die, such losses were still shocking. From the moment we set foot on this mountain, we have no way out. If we don't kill this demon, do we have to let him kill us one by one? A descendant of the Lingbao Holy Land roared. There is a limit to one's strength. No matter how strong Demon Lin is, he is only at the reincarnation developing realm. Kill. We won't die. Even if we are eliminated, it will be worth it if we can drag this bastard down with us. The fighting spirit of the heroes was ignited once again. It was not that they were not afraid of death, but there was no possibility of death on this immortal mountain. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, figures rushed up one after another, bursting with killing intent and terrifying aura. They were surrounded by dazzling Taoist light. All sorts of Tao arts and secret arts were like a torrential downpour that covered the heavens and the earth, and it covered the Tao platform. The treasures, overflowing with colorful brilliance, deduced different wonderful appearances and powers, shrouded Lin Sun alone. Such a shocking scene was sufficient to cause any half-step King Realm expert to feel despair. At this moment, the Wind Whisperer powerhouses who were recording this scene with the leaves of the golden message tree were so shocked that their scalps went numb. Such a horrifying incident had never occurred in the battles for the position of minor titans in the past. If this spread to the outside world, the entire East Victorious domain, no, the entire ancient desolation region would be in an uproar. But at the same time, Demon God Lin's divine might of holding the pass alone left the Wind Whisperer experts dazzled. Their blood boiled as a result. He fought against the geniuses of the various sects all by himself. Such boldness could shake the heavens and earth and shock the world. Rumble, as the battle became more and more intense, Lin Sun's figure became more and more dazzling, ethereal like a dream. His spirit, chi, and spirit were completely burning and boiling like a big furnace, and the strong foundation of Taoism in his body was fully operated. At this moment, every skin of his was flowing with Taoist light, and every strand of his hair was crystal clear, shining with a frightening luster. As he raised his hands and feet, the power of the Great Way roared and caused the void to resonate. The power released by each blow showed the unparalleled power of destruction. Clang! The cold light of Gu's shooting sword flashed, and it was extremely fierce. Puff! At the same time, Lin Sun's palm and fingers swept across, like a heavenly saber breaking the sky, bright and sharp. Kong Ling screamed, but it was too late to dodge. Her throat was cut and scarlet blood sprayed out. Her headless body turned into a peacock with gorgeous wings, but Lin Sun burned her wings into ashes with the Star River refining method, and her body was scorched black. A phoenix without feathers was not as good as a chicken, and a peacock with burnt feathers was even worse. Unfortunately, in the blink of an eye, Kong Ling's body disappeared into thin air. Otherwise, Lin Sun would have the impulse to taste the peacock's meat. On the Taoist altar, blood was raining, and screams were heard one after another. Lin Sun's figure moved, and his whole body shone. His fists were powerful and heavy. Many talents of the ancient orthodoxies exploded one by one, and all of them were killed. Here, the divine light roared, the wind and thunder surged, and the blood chi was like an ocean. Lin Sun rushed up alone. Although he was surrounded by enemies from all directions, he had the courage to fight against 10,000 enemies. On the Taoist altar, blood splashed and gathered into a pool, scarlet and dazzling. Then, the fluctuation of the rules of order emerged, and the blood and corpses all disappeared. Only on the ancient dragon's steel, there were wisps of illusory luster, like tiny wriggling earthworms, constantly gathering. Vaguely, the gray scales on the dragon-shaped body on the steel were glowing with a faint luster, and there was an extra trace of spirituality. This was the power of the Great Way. Every time he defeated an opponent on the Taoist altar, he could obtain a wisp of the Great Way from the immortal mountain and gather it on the dragon steel. Now, as Lin Sun killed more and more opponents, the power of the Great Way gathered on the dragon's steel gradually increased. At the same time, conflicts also broke out on the top of the other 35 peaks. Relatively speaking, it was extremely chaotic. No one was deliberately targeted, but everyone who guarded the Taoist altar had to bear the risk of being challenged constantly. Of course, the competition on other peaks was far less fierce than that on the Taoist altar where Lin Sun was. Boom! The divine light collided, and the magic weapons flew everywhere. The killing was still going on. It was not that Lin Sun didn't feel the pressure, but the pressure of being surrounded by enemies from all directions was far more than he could bear. The most important point was that, although he had met some peerless figures up to this point, they were not as powerful as Xiao Qinghe in terms of combat power. "You trash! Do you only dare to hide behind and wait to take advantage of me?" Suddenly, Lin Sun said coldly. He noticed that some peerless figures with extremely powerful auras gathered in the distance and didn't rush forward. Obviously, they intended to use others to wear down Lin Sun's strength. When Lin Sun's strength was exhausted, these guys would attack without hesitation. As soon as Lin Sun's words came out, the faces of those geniuses who were attacking turned gloomy and extremely annoyed. Anyone who was used as cannon fodder would not feel happy. "How dare you? Don't try to mislead us." A successor of the Pure Land of Longevity, with a feather crown on his head, rushed out. In an instant, he rushed to the Taoist altar, waved a big halberd, and chopped down. This was an extremely outstanding young man who had set foot on the peak with extraordinary divine power. As soon as he attacked, he showed his arrogant and domineering spirit. But just a moment later, he was punched in the chest by Lin Sun, and his body burst like a piece of paper. The bloody scene shocked everyone in the field and made their souls tremble. Since when could peerless figures be killed so easily? At the foot of the mountain, the famous figures and squires of various orthodoxies were also shocked. Even among the peerless talents, demon god Lin could be regarded as the top. His combat power was too strong. Lin Sun glanced at the crowd and said in a cold voice, "Today, I'm here. No matter which ancient orthodoxy you come from, no matter who you are, if you dare to take a step forward, I will kill you without mercy." At this time, the sky above the Taoist altar was empty. The geniuses who rushed up earlier had all been killed, and only Lin Sun stood on it. Under his feet, there was a pool of blood that hadn't faded away. The void around him was filled with a strong and choking smell of blood. But he was spotless, and his figure was out of this world. He was like a demon god overlooking all directions. His power made many people tremble. One person, like a mountain, stood proudly on the Taoist altar, stopping the successors of the major orthodoxies and suppressing all enemies here. This was too crazy. Similarly, this was something that no one could have predicted before. Who could believe that a person with the same cultivation of reincarnation developing realm could defeat the geniuses of the ancient orthodoxies? Those geniuses were all outstanding talents of the younger generation in the outside world. They were famous and were the center of attention. But in front of demon god Lin, they seemed so vulnerable that no one could bear to watch. All of this proved that demon god Lin's combat strength had already arrived at an unprecedented state on the path towards the absolute Tao. Not to mention ordinary geniuses, even existences that were similarly at the apex of the world didn't have the qualifications to compete with demon god Lin. Fortunately, this was on the Immortal Mountain, and there were rules and regulations, so there wouldn't be any real death. Otherwise, the orthodoxies would be doomed to suffer such heavy losses. Moreover, it was precisely because they knew that they wouldn't die completely that these geniuses dared to attack without fear of death. At this time, Yan Zhanqiu couldn't ignore this battle. Lin's performance surprised him, and a strange look surged in his eyes. The first spurt of energy, the second decline, and the third exhaustion. "I'm afraid this lad has consumed a lot of energy in this battle. I don't know how long he can last." Yan Zhanqiu muttered to himself, and then he shook his head. There was nothing to pay attention to. Every top figure who could be ranked on the minor giants list could do this. If Lin Sun hadn't been targeted like this, with the combat strength he had displayed, it wouldn't be a problem for him to be ranked on the minor giants list. Unfortunately, his situation wasn't optimistic. As if confirming Yan Zhanqiu's guess, someone on the mountain peak couldn't help but speak coldly. Demon God Lin, although your combat strength is outstanding, who gave you the guts to look down on us ancient orthodoxies that have existed for a long time? It wasn't just one person who spoke, but a group of people. They were all top figures, and their eyes were cold. According to their judgment, Lin Sun should have consumed a lot of energy in the battle, and it was destined that he wouldn't be able to last for long. Therefore, they were ready to attack. Unfortunately, no one knew how strong Lin Sun's foundation was. In terms of cultivation, no one could compare to him. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Why don't you come up and die? Lin Sun's cold eyes were even more frightening. Demon God Lin, you're too arrogant. Do you really think you're invincible? A woman sneered. Although she was shocked, she couldn't help but feel angry. Because as the descendants of ancient orthodoxies, they had always been high and mighty, and they had an innate sense of superiority when facing people like Lin Sun who had no one to rely on. But now, they were repeatedly defeated by Lin Sun. This was a great humiliation, and it was difficult for them to not be angry. Pooh! However, as soon as the woman finished speaking, a sharp light that was as white as snow swept out from Lin Sun, and the woman's head was chopped off. Chapter 1064. Clang. The broken sword returned to Lin Sun's hand with an illusory snow-white luster. In the distance, the woman died on the spot. Up until the moment of her death, her cold laughter still reverberated through the surroundings, and it had become a great irony. The crowd was furious. They would not sit still and wait for death, so they attacked. The battle became more and more fierce. This time was different from before. Many top figures had been mobilized, and there was no lack of extremely troublesome and powerful experts. For example, a burly man from the Taoism sect of Tsangmei wielded a pair of bronze whips, smashing the void into pieces. A yellow-robed woman from the Pure Land of Longevity was also very eye-catching. She activated a golden lamp, which shone brightly and produced an extremely terrible purification power. On the other side, a black-robed man from the Black Sea Dog tribe held a blood-colored awl in his hand. With a gentle sweep, the blood light surged and crushed the void. In addition, there were also top figures such as the Holy Land of Lingbao and the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect. They were all outstanding with outstanding combat power. The small Taoist altar was full of sabers and swords. The collision of treasures and Taoist magic was like thunder in the ninth heaven, shaking the mountain top. At this time, Lin Sun finally felt a heavy pressure. But this did not make him afraid. Instead, it stimulated the surging fighting intent in the depths of his heart, and his momentum also rose. Although the opponents became stronger, Lin Sun's fighting method changed accordingly. He attacked with the broken sword and fought with the 6 cuts of heavenly yuan. Clang, clang, clang. The clear sound of the broken sword surged through the sky like a tide, like a cry thirsting for blood. It was as white as snow, light and illusory. It was an unfathomable magic weapon, and was not restricted by the rules of the immortal mountain. Obscure and mysterious Tao marking diagrams seethed and flickered on the edge of the blade, and it increased its peerlessly fierce might. And Lin Sun's breath had become extremely fierce. Originally, with his own combat power, even without using the broken sword, he was strong enough to fight against the opponent. But Lin Sun did not want to be delayed. For him, only by killing more opponents in the shortest time could he completely vent his anger and fire. Boom! The robust man held the bronze whips in his hand as he smashed them down. With this strike, wind and lightning surged while the tune of the Tao rumbled, and it emanated might capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth. At this moment, a cold light flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. Star-plucking slash. It was like an eternal night had descended, and 10,000 stars fell. When the saber struck, it illuminated the eternal night and swept up the 10,000 stars. Ka-cha ka-cha. The pair of bronze whips were broken. This pair of treasures was an Imperial Dao extreme weapon with an ancient history. They were the ancient treasures of the vast Sea Dao sect. But now it was cut in half by the broken blade. The tall and sturdy male was furious. His heart was bleeding, and the pain he felt was indescribable. On this immortal divine mountain, there was indeed no such thing as true death. However, if the treasure was destroyed, there was no way for it to recover to its original state. After all, the Imperial Path ultimate weapon was not a living thing, so there was no such thing as life and death. Seeing Lin Sun coming, the burly man could only endure and dodge, even though he hated Lin Sun so much. Boom! An expanse of bright multicolored light enveloped over, dispersing the darkness. It was filled with a holy and purifying power, brilliant like divine light illuminating everything. It was the yellow-robed woman from the pure land of longevity. Lin Sun attacked with the broken blade, while he continued to rush towards the burly man. The burly man's face changed greatly. He exerted all his strength to fight against Lin Sun, but he was punched out of the Taoist altar by Lin Sun. He fell to the ground with a thud, and blood spurted from his mouth. Falling from the Taoist altar meant failure. The burly man couldn't accept it for a while. He couldn't help roaring angrily and rushed to the Taoist altar again. But when he was halfway there, he was shrouded by the invisible power of order and disappeared in an instant. Obviously, he'd been completely eliminated from the competition. At this time, the duel on the Taoist altar was still going on, and it was unprecedentedly fierce. If such a fight happened in the outside world, it was bound to cause unpredictable disasters and make the world panic and uproar. Similarly, a duel like this was bound to attract the attention of countless practitioners and cause a sensation. After all, a duel between the top was rare, and a duel like Lin Sun, who fought against a group of top figures by himself, was even rarer. Whoosh! Before long, the yellow-robed woman from the pure land of longevity screamed. One of her snow-white arms was cut off by the broken blade. Her pretty face turned pale with pain, and she almost lost control of the golden lamp. The crowd was frightened and their pupils dilated. Up to this point, Devil Lin didn't show any sign of weakness. On the contrary, he became braver and more powerful. Some practitioners' morale was shaken and they hesitated. Even if they knew they wouldn't really die, they felt desperate and depressed when they thought that there was little hope even if they fought desperately. Bang! Soon, the yellow-robed woman couldn't hold on any longer and was suppressed by Lin Sun. The broken blade swept across and cut off her slim waist, causing her blood to flow like a waterfall. At the foot of the mountain, the famous figures and attendants of the ancient orthodoxies all clenched their fists. Their breath was terrible, and their faces were livid. Those who were eliminated were the successors of their orthodoxies, which made them feel extremely aggrieved and annoyed. Some of the elders were so angry that their faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. Invisible killing intent filled their bodies. The successors of their sects were also top figures, but they were defeated in such a way, which was very difficult for them to accept. Of course, most of the spectators were excited, and there was a hubbub of excitement. Since it had nothing to do with them, they were naturally happy to watch the show. This was something that hadn't happened for many years. A young man without any foundation had defeated the successors of those ancient orthodoxies. It made people feel emotional. I've underestimated his ability, Yan Zhanqiu frowned. Lin Sun's performance had exceeded his expectations once again, and he was surprised. However, he's still not mature enough. The path of cultivation isn't so simple. Yan Zhanqiu was ranked third among the top 10 giants of Dongxing world, and he had been immersed in the path of cultivation for many years. Even though Lin Sun's performance had surprised him time and time again, it wasn't really shocking, and it wasn't even enough to make him feel fearful. If the peerless Tao path was divided into 3 levels, first glimpse, advanced, and peak, then Yen Zhanqiu judged that Lin Sun's combat prowess should be at the advanced level, but he was still far from the peak level. Moreover, the ancient orthodoxies of the ancient desolation acknowledged that the top geniuses at the beginner level already possessed the qualifications to charge into the minor giants' rankings. The top geniuses that possessed the attainment of the ascendant level would definitely be able to ascend into the minor giants' rankings if nothing unexpected happened. As for the top geniuses at the peak level, every single one of them could be said to be giants amongst their peers, and they possessed the potential to be ranked among the top 10 giants. If you were a figure at the peak level, then perhaps I would look at you differently. Unfortunately, when Yen Zhanqiu thought up to here, he couldn't help but shake his head. There was nothing to feel sorry about. At the same time, the situation of the battles on the other peaks was becoming clearer and clearer. As soon as the top geniuses like Laughing in the Heavens, Ye Chen, Jin Myun, Li Qingping, Yu Lingkong, and Ji Xingyao ascended the Taoist altar, they had already confirmed their overlord status. Moreover, although there were many experts who dared to challenge them, no one dared to gang up on them. This was the advantage of being the inheritors of the ancient orthodoxies. If anyone dared to treat them unfairly, then sorry to say, they would be punished later. In this way, although the threat they suffered while guarding the mountain was always there, compared to Lin Sun, one was in the sky, and the other was on the ground. However, there were also exceptions. For example, although Alu wasn't ganged up on, the treatment he received was similar to that of Lin Sun. Because no one knew who this barbarian-like guy was. When dealing with him, they naturally couldn't be as fearful as dealing with the inheritors of the ancient orthodoxies. What was strange was that since Alu ascended the Taoist altar, he frequently provoked others, giving full play to his natural talent of shooting his mouth off. Trash. Too trash. Is this the so-called top geniuses? Even a pig in my village is stronger than you. Bah. I finally understand that the so-called top geniuses in the world are all fools who deceive the world. None of them can fight. Don't accept it? If you don't accept it, then fight. Whoever is a coward is a coward. Just by listening to these arrogant words, one could know how ugly the faces of those who were provoked by Alu would be. However, it had to be admitted that Alu was really abnormal. His majestic body was like an unshakable mountain, and all the experts who fought with him could only be beaten passively. Such an eye-catching performance naturally attracted the attention of countless people. Zhao Jingxian and Shao Qinghe also ascended the Taoist altar and fought fiercely with their opponent. Their performance was not eye-catching, but it was hard to predict the outcome. Fortunately, at least up to now, the two had not been eliminated. At this time, more than half of the time had passed, and the situation on each mountain was getting more and more tragic. In order to be ranked on the list of junior giants, no matter who it was, they were doing their best to fight and kill, lest they would be eliminated. Only the 9th mountain, where Lin Sun was the most special exception. Most of the top geniuses who ascended this mountain aimed to defeat Lin Sun. Moreover, from the beginning of the battle, Lin Sun dominated the Taoist altar, so that no matter what intention they had to defeat Lin Sun first in order to achieve their wish. Clang! The snow-white broken blade collided with the blood-red awl, making a deafening roar. Then, the blood-red awl in the hand of the black-robed man of the Black Tengu clan exploded with a loud bang and turned into a rain of light. At the same time, Lin Sun had already moved. He took a step forward and punched 3 times in an instant. Each punch was faster and faster than the previous one, like overlapping thunder and raging waves. Bang! The first punch made the black-robed man feel as if he was struck by lightning. His body sank, his right shoulder collapsed, and his tendons and bones were broken. Plop! The second punch made the black-robed man kneel on the ground with blood oozing from his 7 orifices. He let out a heart-wrenching scream, and his spine was broken. Puff! The third punch smashed his head, and the headless body turned into the original shape of a black dog, lying on the ground dripping with blood. The 3 punches were completed in one breath and landed in an instant, as fast as lightning. The expert from the Black Tengu clan was killed on the spot by Lin Sun in a domineering manner. Chapter 1065. One day, he would slaughter all the black demonic dogs in the world. Lin Sun would never forget what he had said in the West Heng boundary. Lin Sun really hated this clan to the extreme. It was not only harmful to the world, but also guilty of many sins. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were utterly heartless. Therefore, when Lin Sun killed the black-robed man, his means were particularly domineering and bloody. A commotion broke out in the surroundings. Many geniuses revealed looks of shock, shaken by this scene. It's really abnormal. Even a top figure can't be so strong, can he? Someone said in a trembling voice. Up to this point, at least dozens of geniuses had been killed by Lin Sun, and 7 or 8 of the top figures had been killed by Lin Sun. But Lin Sun was not even injured from beginning to end. On the Taoist altar, Lin Sun did not intend to stop and continued to attack his opponent. "How dare you!" a young man in a splendid robe screamed. Noticing that Lin Sun was rushing over, he trembled with fear. "Idiot!" Lin Sun looked cold. His clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were as deep and frightening as the abyss. Boom! When he opened his mouth, he had already pressed his palm. The young man in a splendid robe retreated and flashed away. At the same time, he shouted angrily, "You are inviting disaster for yourself. Even if you can be invincible here, you will be killed in the outside world." As soon as his voice fell, his neck was suddenly cut by a broken blade, and a bloody head was thrown into the air. "Damn it!" The others' faces were livid, and their eyes were full of anger and hatred. They should have encircled Lin Sun, but they never thought that they would be killed one after another by Lin Sun. No one had expected this, and the blow was too heavy. "Demon Lin, do you know what you are doing? You don't bow your head obediently, but act violently. This will only make your death more embarrassing when you return to the outside world." They made threats. "Don't you descendants of the orthodoxy feel ashamed? You can't defeat me even if you attack me together. Now you are defeated by me. Not only do you not know how to respect me, but you also dare to threaten me. Do you deserve to be called talents?" Lin Sun blocked the Taoist altar alone, like a demon dominator, oppressing people to the point of suffocation. Regardless of whether it was the experts not too far away from the Tao platform or the renowned figures and attendants at the foot of the mountain, all of their expressions were extremely unsightly. Being reprimanded like this by a young man that didn't belong to any sect was something they'd never experienced before, and they felt extremely furious and aggrieved in their hearts. "With me, Lin Sun, here today, all of you little rats can dream of occupying this place." Lin Sun's words were cold and overbearing, and he revealed the elegant demeanor of a devil god. "Boasting shamelessly, kill!" Someone roared and charged forward with the others. They had no way out. Even if Lin Sun was strong enough to make them frightened and uneasy, they had no choice but to fight desperately. In any case, he wouldn't truly die. If they could exhaust Lin Sun's physical strength and kill him, it would be a victory. Unfortunately, these geniuses were doomed to be no match for Lin Sun. Their blood flowed like a river, and their heads rolled on the ground. There were more than 100 experts in this group, and they were already the last force to ascend this mountain peak. Their scale could also be said to be the largest, and they had the advantage in numbers. But the result didn't change. Under the slaughter of Lin Sun's broken sword, blood splashed and screams rang out from time to time. On the coiling dragon tablet, wisps of Great Way luck like tiny earthworms were gathering and increasing rapidly. The fine dragon scales were shining with the unique luster of Great Way luck. Later, the area where the dragon tail was entrenched suddenly lit up, showing a golden and holy luster, full of spirituality like an illusion. This was an extremely amazing phenomenon produced when the Great Way luck gathered and accumulated to a certain extent. It's a miracle. He actually managed to light up the dragon tail while guarding the mountain. This has never happened before in the past. At the foot of the mountain, an elder of an ancient sect was shocked and moved. Nearby there was also an uproar. Many people were dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. The coiling dragon tablet was shaped like a lying dragon, and it was divided into 7 areas: dragon tail, dragon claws, dragon body, dragon head, dragon whiskers, dragon horns, and dragon eyes. When the obtained Great Way luck gathered to a certain extent, one part of the coiling dragon could produce a divine glow. In the ranking battle for providence, it would decide the ranking. The more the luck, the more parts of the coiling dragon would produce the divine glow, and the higher its ranking would be, and vice versa. In the past years, there had never been a person like Lin Sun, who could make a part of the coiling dragon tablet produce the divine glow just by guarding the mountain. This could be said to be the first in history, and it was unparalleled in both ancient and modern times. This isn't surprising at all. Any expert that possesses the attainments of reaching the next level in a hopeless situation would similarly be able to accomplish this if they were placed in the same situation. Some people were very calm. It can only be said that demon god Lin has the opportunity to create this miracle because the situation is too special. Yan Zhanxiu nodded secretly. This was true. In his opinion, the luck Lin Sun had obtained could indeed rank first among the 36 mountains. But it was just guarding the mountain after all. When the battle for luck broke out, the more luck Lin Sun had, the more he would lose, and the more luck he would lose. In the end, it was very likely that others would benefit from it. Thinking of this, Yan Zhanxiu was stunned. He suddenly realized that all the assumptions and conjectures he had made had unconsciously confirmed that Lin Sun could successfully guard the mountain. This made him frown. This was another accident. You don't come over. On the platform of the 9th mountain, at the end of the battle, a powerhouse was so frightened that his fighting spirit collapsed. Before Lin Sun could approach, he screamed. Swoosh! The other strong man turned around and ran away, jumping off the Taoist altar in a panic. He was really frightened by Lin Sun's overwhelming power of the demon god. This was shocking and also made people's hearts tremble. As for the rest, after seeing this scene, they completely broke down and began to flee regardless of anything. Even if they knew that they could not really die, they did not want to face demon god Lin again. Lin Sun was like a divine mountain lying on the platform. It was impossible for him to shake him. Shame! What a disgrace! At the foot of the mountain, a senior figure roared in anger and stamped his feet. No one could accept this. As the successor of an ancient orthodoxy, he was famous, prestigious, and had a high status. But now, his fighting spirit collapsed and he fled in a panic, even abandoning his face and dignity. If this was spread out, it would definitely be a stain on these ancient orthodoxies and they would become a joke. On the platform, only Lin Sun was left. He stood there alone, looking down at the heroes in the distance with a cold expression. "Is that all you've got?" he asked. The surrounding area could not calm down. All the talents of the sects were livid, their chests heaving up and down, their hearts filled with shame and grievance. But when they met Lin Sun's indifferent and deep eyes, none of them dared to step forward and fight him. They were really frightened. "Although you are strong, do you think you can leave this place alive?" Someone gritted his teeth and said. Puff! Lin Sun struck with his broken sword. Blood splashed and the man's body was cut into 2 halves. Blood poured out like a waterfall. "It's nothing more than intimidation and threats. I've killed so many idiots like you since I entered the ancient desolation realm. Why do I care about these **T threats? Lin Sun's face was full of disdain and his words were plain, showing his invincible confidence. The faces of the people in the field turned pale. Clang! Lin Sun stood on the Taoist altar and killed those geniuses from different sects with his broken sword. Since he had offended them completely, there was no reason for him to show mercy. Although he could not kill them completely, he just wanted to kill them to his heart's content. Blood splashed. Several people were killed on the spot because they were caught off guard. Run! The rest of the people were in a complete panic. They scattered and rushed down the mountain road in panic like stray dogs. Some people directly rushed to the mountains on both sides of the Golden Path, but were instantly eliminated by the rules of the Immortal Mountain. This made the elders of the ancient orthodoxy at the foot of the mountain livid. Today's defeat was not only unyielding, but also a disgrace that could not be washed away. In fact, they also saw that Lin Sun had already established the general trend and was difficult to be defeated. But it was too shameful for their successors to scatter and flee like this. If possible, Lin Sun would like to catch all these guys in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, he had to guard the mountain and could not leave the platform. Otherwise, all his previous efforts would be in vain. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun stopped thinking about it. He looked sideways at the coiling dragon tablet not far away and calculated the time. Then he sat cross-legged on the ground and began to meditate. The battle didn't last long from the beginning to the end, but it was absolutely tragic. Of course, this was only for Lin Sun's opponents. Some people had speculated that he couldn't hold on for long, but the result was exactly the opposite. However, Lin Sun did consume a lot of energy at this time. After the battle, he had consumed at least 70% of his spiritual energy. This was not a problem. Before the battle for Providence, the Immortal Mountain would send a divine rain, which could restore all the strength of the practitioners who succeeded in guarding the mountain in an instant. Before the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, Xing Jinzi from the Dachenlin Temple in the sacred Hermit Land was right. In this world, not everyone is qualified to be called a heavenly son. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with contemplation. After this battle, he increasingly agreed with Xing Jinzi's view. In the previous battle, although it was extremely fierce, he didn't use the fury of Yazi or fighting saint method from beginning to end, including silence chop, life and death chop and other killing moves. But in such a case, the heavenly son of a sect still couldn't be defeated. How could he be called a heavenly son? It was laughable. At the same time, Lin Sun's cognition of the extreme Tao also had a different understanding. In the past, he had always regarded the extreme Tao as the strongest Tao, which was rare since ancient times. Even in the ancient times, it was extremely rare. But now it seemed that there was obviously a misunderstanding in his cognition. Chapter 1066. The Absolute Way was regarded as the strongest way. When Lin Sun first came into contact with the Absolute Way, this way was described as unreachable and enviable. It was rare in ancient times. In ancient times, this way was almost as ethereal as a legend, and many geniuses sighed at it. Some people even doubted whether this way really existed. But as Lin Sun's cultivation deepened and he experienced many things, he gradually found that the definition of the Absolute Way by the practitioners in the world had changed along with the passage of time. In his understanding, the Absolute Way was the strongest way since ancient times. When one reached this level, he was like the king of a realm and could defeat all opponents. But in the eyes of other practitioners, the core successors of ancient orthodoxies like Kong Ling, Su Xingfeng and Xue Qianhen were already the Absolute Way. There were bound to be mistakes in this. In the previous battles, Lin Sun had killed more than 10 so-called peerless figures. But according to Lin Sun's judgment, the strength of these peerless figures could only be regarded as touching the threshold of the road to the top, but had not yet entered it. Even some people who hadn't touched the threshold boasted that they were the Absolute Way, which made Lin Sun feel absurd and ridiculous. Was his cognition too harsh, or the world's definition of the Absolute Way had become extremely tolerant? Lin Sun didn't know. But he knew that compared with these Absolute Way, People like Sword Devil Yechen and Laughing at the Heavens were undoubtedly more in line with the definition of the Absolute Way. Even if I take a step back and divide the Absolute Way into 3 levels, those guys who were killed by me just now are at the bottom at best, just at the beginning of the Absolute Way. As for people like Yechen and Laughing at the Heavens, they are just at the beginning of the Absolute Way. As for how strong they are, it's hard to estimate. And the top figures of the previous generation, such as Yun Qi Bai, Yen Zhanxiu, Wang Xuanyu, Mi Hengzhen and Yi Move, should have extremely amazing achievements on the Absolute Way. Even if they can't be called the strongest, they should not be far from it, Lin Sun pondered. The Great Era was coming, which meant that there would be countless peerless geniuses in the world, rising like stars and competing in the Great Era. Before that, if he could have a deep and accurate understanding of the Absolute Way among his peers, it would be beneficial and harmless. No matter what, I will walk my Tao. The path of the Tao will be the most unprecedented. After a long time, all the doubts in Lin Sun's mind disappeared. His Taoist heart was clear and firm. He sat cross-legged on the Taoist altar and pondered the mysteries of the summit. On the other mountain peaks, the great battles were still unfolding. At the same time, the spectators from different orthodoxies at the foot of the mountain were also paying close attention to the situation. Lin Sun was destined to get one of the 36 places on the list of junior giants. Now it was time to see who would get the places on the other peaks. The battles on every single mountain peak could be said to be horrifying. It was a battle between those of the same generation and a battle between experts. Any single battle was sufficient to cause a great uproar in the outside world. But on the Immortal God Mountain, it was a common sight. The powerhouses of the Wind Whisperer clan were almost too busy. There were too many remarkable battles, and there were countless peerless characters who shone brilliantly on the battlefield. Moreover, each of them had their own distinct characteristic. It was really dazzling, and it was difficult to choose between them. At the same time, Lin Sun also looked at the peaks of other mountains and spread out his huge spiritual power to watch the battles. The wild blade laughs at the heavens. His saber was as fast as lightning with earth-shattering power. Since he ascended to the Taoist altar, almost no one could stand more than 10 moves from him. The sword Devil Yichen was similarly outstanding. The ancient crepe myrtle sword emitted a vast sword intent, and it possessed a dignified aura and an extremely destructive devilish might. It swept through everything before it, and no one was able to resist its edge. On the contrary, Jin Myun was also a peerless swordsman, but his sword intent was as violent as thunder. It was overwhelming and strong, and its killing intent soared into the sky. Li Qingping's fighting means were strange, cruel and unpredictable. He fought with a green jade flute. The sound of the flute was like the sound of ghosts and gods, which had the power to take away people's souls. Yu Lingkong, Ji Xingyao, Go Yanjun. These peerless characters who had been famous for a long time were destined to be on the list of junior giants. Lin Sun paid special attention to Go Yanjun. His fighting style could be described as cruel and abnormal. Any opponent that challenged him would definitely have their bodies forcefully torn apart by his hands, causing severed limbs to shatter and a rain of blood to spray down like a waterfall. His opponents would suffer unimaginable torture and devastation before they were eliminated. Such cruel means also aroused the anger and roar of the elders of many ancient orthodoxies. They couldn't wait to kill this black dog with their own hands. But although Go Yanjun's means were cruel, it was extremely shocking. Most of the strong people who witnessed such a bloody scene were so shocked that they didn't dare to challenge him, for fear that they would be torn apart by Go Yanjun. When Lin Sun looked over, he saw Go Yanjun holding a beautiful woman in his hands. His hands separated, and the woman's arms and body were torn apart like a piece of cloth. The bright red blood rained down on the Taoist altar like a waterfall. Go Yanjun revealed an excited and bloodthirsty smile, and then he stretched out his scarlet red tongue to lick the blood that was sprinkling in the air. After that, he suddenly took a deep breath and let out a moan of comfort while his expression became extremely intoxicated. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, he also noticed Lin Sun's gaze. He grinned, revealing his snow-white teeth, and said something silently, "You're right, Lin Sun. Demon God Lin, I'll tear your hands apart like this and taste whether your blood has the wonderful breath of a demon god." His Adam's apple moved, and he laughed unscrupulously as if he was staring at a tempting prey. Lin Sun glanced at him quietly and withdrew his gaze with a straight face. If he met Go Yanjin in the battle for luck, he didn't mind torturing this black dog to death little by little. Then, Lin Sun saw Xiao Qinghe. Lin Sun was surprised that Xiao Qinghe could continue fighting on the Taoist altar until now. As far as he knew, although Xiao Qinghe was powerful, there was still a long way to go from the real top. But Xiao Qinghe could guard the mountain until now, which could only prove that this guy's potential was extremely deep, far beyond the real strength he showed. But immediately Lin Sun frowned. Xiao Qinghe was in a bad situation. His opponent was a young man in a feather robe with a feminine aura. His skin was fair, his face was handsome like a woman, and he carried a unique charm. If Lin Sun remembered correctly, this young man in a feather robe was called Qing Wenwan, and he was regarded as the holy son of Qing Luan. Qing Lianer, who died in Lin Sun's hands, was the cousin of Qing Wenwan. At this moment, Qing Wenjuan's figure was unfathomable, like an ethereal figure. He was not only fast, but also extremely mysterious. No matter how Xiao Qinghe attacked, he couldn't even touch Qing Wenjuan's clothes. There was no doubt that Qing Wenwan had an absolute advantage in body movement. Originally, Xiao Qinghe had no hope of winning under normal circumstances, but Qing Wenwan wasn't in a hurry to defeat his opponent. Instead, he played with Xiao Qinghe like a cat playing with a mouse. Qing Wenjuan's temperament was feminine like a woman, and he was extremely enchanting. His slender and fair hand held a thin and sharp golden needle. He seemed to be embroidering and regarded Xiao Qinghe as a piece of cloth. Every time he attacked, he would pierce a fine needle-like hole on Xiao Qinghe's body. Xiao Qinghe was obviously suffering great pain. His face was livid, and he was extremely angry. But he couldn't catch Qing Wenjuan's steps at all, so he suffered more and more injuries. It could be clearly seen that the skin all over his body was pierced with fine bloody holes, and strands of blood soaked out, outlining the embryonic form of a rose. Qing Wenwan was indeed embroidering. His movements even carried a kind of unconstrained and effortless beauty, like a great painter who had reached the extreme realm waving his brush and splashing ink. However, this method of treating his opponent as a canvas, using blood as ink and golden needles as the tip of his brush, didn't make people feel a trace of beauty. Instead, it seemed extremely horrifying. Anyone who saw this scene would probably feel their scalp numb and feel terrified. Xiao Qinghe was in great pain. His skin was trembling all over, and his eyes were about to crack. He seemed to be desperately trying to kill Qing Wenwan with all his strength. But everything seemed to be in vain. Qing Wenwan looked leisurely and calm. The golden needles in his hand flew, and he turned a blind eye to Xiao Qinghe's anger. This was a humiliation. After all, Xiao Qinghe was also one of the 16 blazing sons of Sun Moon Palace. His identity, status, and combat strength could be regarded as the top of the younger generation in the world. But at this time, he was manipulated as a canvas, which was undoubtedly a serious trampling and insult to his dignity and Taoist heart. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but reveal a touch of coldness in his black eyes, and there was an irrepressible killing intent in his heart. Although Qing Wenjuan's means were not as brutal as Go Yanjin's, he was even more abnormal. At this moment, Lin Sun's face changed. He clenched his fists quietly, and the killing intent in his eyes seemed to be real, bursting out with a frightening divine light. On the top of the mountain in the distance, Xiaoqinghe's figure suddenly stiffened and stopped in the air, as if he was cast with the fixed body technique. At this moment, Qing Wenwan stepped forward, pinched the slender golden needles, and pierced them into Xiaoqinghe's heart. Then, his figure flashed, and he returned to his original place. But Xiaoqinghe's body seemed to have been sliced by countless crisscrossing threads, and it suddenly exploded. The blood mist evaporated, reflected in the void, and turned into a rich and enchanting bloody rose pattern, bright red and dazzling. All the strongmen who noticed this scene felt cold all over, and fear arose in their hearts. This means was simply abnormal to the extreme. However, Qing Wenwan seemed to be completely unaware of this. She rubbed her chin as she stared at the blood-red rose that was blooming furiously in the sky, and her feminine and fair face was filled with admiration. Although Lin Sun knew that it was impossible for Xiaoqinghe to die on the immortal mountain, he still felt endless anger in his heart, and his black eyes were terrifyingly cold. Killing was just a matter of nodding one's head to the ground, but Qing Wenwan used such abnormal and bloody means to humiliate and torture Xiaoqinghe. This was absolutely unforgivable. Chapter 1067. Xiaoqinghe was eliminated in an extremely humiliating and cruel way. This made Lin Sun unable to restrain his anger. It was not a big deal to be defeated, but it was unacceptable for Lin Sun to be humiliated in such a way. Lin Sun, are you very angry? That's right. When you killed my cousin Lianer, I was also very angry. A feminine and hoarse voice came to his ears, like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue. Lin Sun saw that Qing Wenwan had looked at the mountain where Lin Sun was from a distance. He was dressed in a feather robe. His skin was white, his face was handsome and enchanting, and his thin lips were scarlet like a red blade. You can take revenge on me. Why did you kill Xiaoqinghe? Lin Sun looked cold. Because I also want you to experience the feeling of being angry. Qing Wenwan laughed wantonly and arrogantly. Speaking of which, you have no one to rely on. You don't even have a relative in the ancient desolation realm. It's a headache for me to take revenge on you. Fortunately, I finally found Xiaoqinghe. Obviously, before this, Qing Wenwan had secretly inquired about Lin Sun and intended to kill Lin Sun's close people. Don't you worry about being attacked by the Sun Moon Palace? Lin Sun frowned. He felt that this guy looked feminine and calm, but in fact, he was as crazy as a pervert. If I was afraid, would I dare to do this? Qing Wenwan said unhurriedly, You've seen what happened to Xiaoqinghe. I'm not afraid to tell you that unless you obediently kneel down and beg me right now, I'll make every single person related to you into a painting of blood. In the end, he couldn't help but smile. His feminine and enchanting face was full of a crazy aura. Lin Sun was silent for a moment, and then he also smiled and said, Then I'd like to see whether your Cyan Phoenix tribe can bear my anger. If you dare to do this, I dare to destroy your whole tribe. If you don't believe me, you can try to see who will laugh in the end. By the way, you'd better pray that I don't meet you later. His voice was calm, but it was filled with determination. After that, he withdrew his eyes and no longer looked at Qing Wenwan. Qing Wenwan's actions had already touched his reverse scale, causing him to be unable to endure it any longer, and he aroused the resolution to kill Qing Wenwan. At the same time, Qing Wenwan was startled. Suddenly, she giggled hysterically. Her feminine eyes were filled with madness. Then let's give it a try. Clang! On another mountain peak, Alu was like a ferocious fighting beast that didn't know fatigue. With just his bare fists, he blasted away his opponent's treasure and kicked him out of the Dao platform. His battle intent surged into the sky as he looked arrogantly at the surroundings, and then he pointed at the group of geniuses nearby that were terrified to the point of not daring to move forward. He said with displeasure, Why are all of you terrified? Aren't you guys unconvinced? Why are you cowering there like a girl? You guys are T prodigies. It was extremely provocative, and it caused the geniuses of the various sects to be infuriated to the point their lungs almost exploded. They wished for nothing more than to tear apart this barbarian's stinky mouth. But in the end, no one dared to step forward. It couldn't be helped. This barbarian's combat strength was just like his foul mouth. They were ridiculously powerful. Up until this point in the battle, even peerless figures had been forcefully suppressed by him, so who would dare to step forward? Seeing this, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze and looked at Zhao Jingxian on another mountain peak. After several years, Zhao Jingxuan's strength had also advanced by leaps and bounds, even to the extent that even Lin Sun was amazed by her strength. Dressed in a purple dress, her slender and graceful figure was as graceful as a swimming dragon, fighting on the Dao platform like a fairy strolling leisurely in the courtyard. A treasure cauldron of 9 dragons was controlled by her, which deduced 9 phantoms of real dragons. They held their heads high in the void, flying and roaring, and their divine power was monstrous, as if the power of heaven was descending. Her opponent was a peerless figure, but in just dozens of rounds, he was firmly suppressed by Zhao Jingxian in a head-on confrontation. She has Imperial Dragon Chi and has mastered the unique skills of the Heavens Pivot Holy Land. It's reasonable for her to have such achievements. Lin Sun was relieved. According to his judgment, if nothing unexpected happened, Zhao Jingxian could easily be promoted to the Junior Tycoon list. Yes, Junior Sister Jingxian has reached the level of reaching the next level on the way of peerless cultivation, and is not far from reaching the peak. At the same time, Yan Zhanqiu, who had been paying attention to Zhao Jingxian, also nodded secretly, with a touch of heartfelt admiration in his eyes. Buzz. Suddenly, the whole immortal mountain was buzzing incessantly, producing the immortal and supreme rule of the Great Way, which made the top of the 36 peaks shine brilliantly. It could be clearly seen that the battles on every Taoist altar were stopped at this moment. At the same time, the powerhouses who failed the challenge were expelled from the Taoist altar by an invisible force, leaving only 36 figures standing on the Taoist altar. After 30 minutes, the guarding of the mountain was over. In an instant, the people waiting at the foot of the mountain all looked at the figures standing on the top of the mountain. Laughing at the heavens, Yi Chen, Jin Myun, Chu Beihai, Li Qingping, Yu Lingkong, Ji Xingyao, Go Yanjin, Zhao Jingxian. Of course, there was also Lin Sun. A total of 36 talents had successfully guarded the mountain. Those who climbed the mountain but didn't rush to the Taoist altar all showed a look of frustration and disappointment when they saw this scene. Climbing the mountain and guarding the mountain seemed to be a step apart, but there was a world of difference between them. Those who succeeded in guarding the mountain would be ranked on the Junior Tycoon list and become a Junior Tycoon among the younger generation. This was a form of extraordinary glory, and it was the most powerful display of one's strength. As for the geniuses of the other sects, they could only be reduced to supporting roles and be eliminated. So, they were bound to be unable to draw too much attention in the future. This was the competition for the Grand Tao, and a single step was very likely to be the difference between the heavens and the earth. Next, it's time to carry out the final ranking battle for karmic luck. I wonder who amongst the 36 junior tycoons will be able to take the first place in the end. The cultivators at the foot of the mountain discussed animatedly, and the cultivators of the various ancient sects were watching from the sidelines. Compared to the past, the competition this time can absolutely be said to be unprecedented. Some of the geniuses of the sects would absolutely possess the strength to be ranked on the junior tycoon list if it was in the past. Yet now they've become losers, and it's a pity. Exactly. It isn't that they aren't strong, but the most dazzling and peerless figures from the 4 great worlds of the region of ancient desolation have converged amongst the geniuses participating in the competition this time. So, their losses aren't because of the battle. Every time a great era comes, there will be countless monstrous and geniuses rising to compete for supremacy in the world and the Grand Tao. Although the great era hasn't come this time, We can already feel from these young people that this great era is destined to be unprecedented and unprecedented. Those seniors were all sighing with emotion. The only exception is perhaps demon god Lin. Being targeted and attacked by so many geniuses of the ancient orthodoxies, if it were someone else, I'm afraid he would have been killed long ago. But this guy held on until the end, which is really amazing. Haha, just wait and see. The more eye-catching he is, the more miserable he will be when he leaves the immortal Forbidden Land. Many people were also paying attention to Lin Sun. Before, no one had expected that he could be ranked on the junior tycoon list. They all thought that he was destined to be eliminated under the attack of the geniuses of the ancient orthodoxies. But the result was unexpected. Lin Sun won. He alone defeated all the geniuses on the 9th mountain peak. This also attracted the attention of the experts on the junior tycoon list on the other mountain peak. This is interesting. Laughing at the heavens' sharp eyes burst out a touch of brilliance. Demon god Lin. I'm looking forward to having a drink with you. Sword demon Yi Chen's sleeves fluttered in the wind as he smiled happily. That's more like a demon god. Alu grinned. Jin Myun, Chu Beihai, Yu Lingkong, Li Qingping, Go Yanjun, and the others all looked gloomy and unsightly. Previously, they had all sent their forces to suppress Lin Sun, but they never thought that Lin Sun would be able to win under such circumstances. This made them feel disgusted, as if they had eaten a fly. Impressive, demon god little brother. Zhao Jingxian blinked and teased mischievously. So what if he won? Let's see how long a shameless guy like you can be arrogant in the upcoming fight for Providence. Ji Xingyao was very displeased. As for the other geniuses who had no enmity with Lin Sun and did not know him, but were also ranked on the junior tycoon list, they could not help but pay more attention to Lin Sun. Some were surprised, some were impressed, and some were wary and vigilant. Next would be the ranking battle. Lin Sun's existence was undoubtedly an anomaly, so they had to pay attention to him. Lin Sun did not care about these people's attention at all. At his level, although he did not dare to boast that he was absolutely sure to win among his peers, he was absolutely not afraid of any opponent. How will the fight for Providence proceed? Lin Sun looked at the Taoist altars on different peaks. There were no judges on the immortal God Mountain. Lin Sun only knew that it was enough to follow the rules. Boom! Just as Lin Sun was pondering, every Taoist altar on the 36 peaks rumbled, and rays of golden light rushed out. They intersected in the void at the center of the peaks, bursting out a shocking holy luster. Then, the divine light intertwined and gradually formed a huge battlefield. The battlefield was black and white, and it was incomparably huge. It was built on the void, shining with indestructible eternal luster. As soon as it appeared, it attracted everyone's attention. The 36 golden paths led to the center of the battlefield from the peaks of the different peaks. This was the battlefield of Providence. The ranking battle of the junior tycoons was about to begin. When the battle began, the restrictive formation of the immortal God Mountain would automatically operate and move different experts to the battlefield to fight. The winner would not only be ranked higher, but would also be able to seize a part of the Great Way's providence. It's about to begin. At the foot of the mountain, everyone's eyes were focused on the battlefield of Providence in the sky. The experts of the Wind Whisperer clan had prepared a thick stack of golden message tree leaves, intending to record the providence that was about to erupt. The unparalleled battles on the battlefield. Chapter 1068. At the same time, the junior giants on the other mountain peaks looked at the central battlefield with unprecedented fanaticism. No matter how talented or shrewd they were, those who could stand on the list of junior giants were all young people under the age of 30. Who could remain indifferent at such a moment? As geniuses who had reached the top and surpassed their peers, they all had their own pride. In this battle for luck, no matter who it was, they would do their best. No one was willing to be below others. Fight for an earth-shattering victory. Suddenly, A strange, buzzing sound rang out, shaking the universe. Under countless gazes, 2 of the 36 golden paths were rippling like a tide. The next moment, the junior giants standing in front of the 2 golden paths were moved to the central battlefield. They were a man and a woman. The man was tall, and his momentum was like ice and snow, emitting a bone-piercing chill. He came from the origin sect of Dongxing territory, and his name was Lai Wenliang. The woman was slim and graceful, like a lotus in a pond. She had delicate features, and wisps of purple light lingered around her, making her look ethereal. She came from the Tai Taoism school, and her name was Gu Liangping. Both of them were top figures that Lin Sun didn't know, but the fact that they could occupy a mountain peak and become one of the 36 junior giants was enough to prove their strength. Soon, the battle broke out without any suspense. The battlefield was full of divine splendor and treasure light. As soon as it began, an earth-shattering and fierce battle appeared. At the foot of the mountain, there was a constant uproar. On the mountain peak, Lin Sun and the other junior giants were also paying close attention. It didn't take long for the battle to come to an end. With a slight advantage, Gu Liangping defeated Lai Wenliang, seriously injuring him. At the same time, an illusory power of great Wei rushed out of the dragon tablet that originally belonged to Lai Wenliang and poured into the dragon tablet that belonged to Gu Liangping. Moreover, the immortal god mountain rewarded Gu Liangping, the winner, with an additional power of great Wei. This was how the battle for luck was like. Not only could they seize the opponent's great Wei luck, but they could also receive rewards from the immortal god mountain. Without sacred treasures and forbidden powers as trump cards, the competition is based on one's true battle prowess. Lai Wenliang is also extremely powerful, but the power of the great path he controls is slightly inferior to that of Gu Liangping. Lin Sun was lost in thought. The other minor giants were also evaluating Gu Liangping's battle prowess. They were thinking about how they would deal with and win against this woman. Soon, the second match began. It was Go Yinzhen's turn. His opponent was a man named Gao Shanhai, who was from the Tianyun Dao sect in the West Hung realm. He was extremely powerful. Boom! The moment the battle began, Gao Shanhai took out his treasure and gave it his all. It was obvious that he knew how terrifying Go Yin was. Go Yinzhen grinned ferociously as he pulled out a blood-colored whip. It had a total of 72 segments, and it was like a blood-colored spine. As soon as it was whipped, an extremely ear-piercing explosion resounded in the battlefield. His figure was wild and flamboyant. The blood whip soared into the air, releasing terrifying fluctuations of the great path. In just a dozen exchanges, he had suppressed Gao Shanhai. After more than 40 rounds, Gao Shanhai had been whipped until his entire body was covered in cuts and bruises, and many of his muscles and bones were broken. After more than 60 rounds, Gao Shanhai's head was smashed, and his body was forcefully blown apart by the blood whip. Whoosh! Blood rained down, bathing Go Yinzhen's figure in it. It made him look like a bloodthirsty demon, extremely terrifying. He's too strong. This black dog has actually comprehended the great path of Black Demon Azura, which is a rare power of the great path on the Supreme Path list. Its power is treacherous and ruthless. Although the Black Demon Azura clan is disgusting, I have to admit that this clan has a strong foundation. Go Yinzhen is definitely a core character in the clan. At the foot of the mountain there was a constant discussion. They were all shocked by Go Yinzhen's brutal and fierce fighting posture. It was extremely difficult to defeat a powerhouse who was also a small tycoon like him. And it was even more difficult to kill him. But Go Yinzhen could do this, which undoubtedly proved that the combat power he possessed was enough to rank in the top ranks in this battle for luck. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant and brutal. It turns out that he has something to rely on. Lin Sun's black eyes surged. He had a panoramic view of the battle, and finally had a rough idea of Go Yinzhen's real strength. Lin Sun, you should know that you are the one I want to kill the most. You'd better wash your neck and wait for me." Suddenly, Go Yenjin let out a shout, and his scarlet eyes flashed with a cruel luster. Then, he was moved back to the Taoist altar at the top of the mountain. On the dragon tablet beside him, there was also a reward of the great path of luck. Look, what did I say just now? Even if demon god Lin ranks in the list of small giants, he will be targeted and suppressed. At the foot of the mountain, many strong sects gloated. Lin Sun looked calm and unmoved. In this battle for luck, there were two people he wanted to kill the most. The first was Qin Wenwan, and the second was Go Yenjin. In the third battle, Yu Lingkong appeared on the battlefield. After dozens of rounds, he defeated his opponent. Compared with the time at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, Yu Lingkong had undoubtedly become more powerful. However, Lin Sun was not surprised. In his view, Yu Lingkong's talent and foundation were extremely outstanding, and he was born in a sage family. It was difficult for him not to become powerful after entering the pure land of longevity. In the fourth battle, Laughing at the Heavens won. In the fifth battle, Li Qingping won. In the sixth battle, one battle after another was carried out. Among them, there were some powerful figures that no one could ignore. There were even some unfamiliar ones, such as Zhan Feng, the successor of the Nine Wondrous Sword Pavilion in the southern profound world, and Bai Donglu, the descendant of the ancient Bai Feng clan in the Dongxing world, and so on. In fact, at this time, those who could rank 36th on the list of small giants were all very terrifying. In the 14th battle, Zhao Jingxian faced off against Tuoba Zhe, the descendant of the Tuoba clan in the Dongxing world. Tuoba Zhe was one of the more dazzling ones. His fighting style could be described as ghostly and swift like thunder. The spectators had long since remembered him. However, when he encountered Zhao Jingxian, he lost miserably. In just a moment, he had no choice but to admit defeat. The reason was very simple. Zhao Jingxian had displayed the ultimate technique of the spiritual treasure Holy Land, the myriad transformations scripture. As soon as this technique was used, Zhao Jingxuan's body turned into thousands of figures. The battlefield of luck was filled with her figures, and every one of them seemed real. Tuoba Zhe's biggest advantage was his extraordinary speed. However, when he encountered such a scene, he was immediately at a loss. No matter how he attacked, he could not lock on to Zhao Jingxuan's real body. In the end, he could only admit defeat. When he saw this, Lin Sun couldn't help but recall the time he'd killed Gong Yangyu. Gong Yangyu had similarly cultivated the myriad transformations scripture. Unfortunately, Gong Yangyu was obviously too inferior when compared to Zhao Jingxian. In the 15th battle, Chu Beihai moved out. However, it seemed like fate made a fool of him, and he'd encountered the sword devil, Yi Qin. This battle drew the attention of many, and the battle was unprecedentedly intense. No matter if it was Chu Beihai or Yi Qin, both of them were influential figures amongst peerless figures. This battle between them could be said to be a battle between dragons and tigers. However, after over 100 moves, Chu Beihai was no match for Yi Qin in the end. Yi Qin's sword pierced through his chest, and he had no choice but to admit defeat. In my opinion, even if you have the chance to fight Lin Sun, you're bound to be no match for him. After the victor was decided, Yi Qin spoke abruptly. His words were like a thorn that pierced into Chu Beihai's heart, and it caused his face to sink while he was furious. Yi Qin smiled lightly, and he paid no attention to Chu Beihai before turning around and leaving. Chu Beihai grunted coldly, and he left with a bellyful of rage and unwillingness. He wanted to see what rank Lin Sun could ascend to. In the 16th battle, Jin Myun's opponent admitted defeat. In the 17th battle, the golden path in front of Lin Sun abruptly rolled. "It's finally my turn." Lin Sun only felt his figure shake, and then he was swept away by an invisible force. The next moment, he appeared on the central battlefield. Raising his eyes, Lin Sun looked at the opposite side, and then he couldn't help but be startled. At the same time, A figure who had been moved to the central battlefield with Lin Sun was also startled, and then he suddenly let out a feminine laugh. God is really kind to me to let me meet you in the first round. How lucky I am! His laughter was filled with maniacal delight. This person was dressed in a feather robe, and his appearance was handsome and enchanting. He was even more beautiful than a woman. His thin lips were like a burning red blade, scarlet and enchanting. It was Qing Wenwan, the holy son of Sion Phoenix. Ha ha, there's a good show to watch. Qing Wenwan's means are incomparably abnormal, and his combat strength is outstanding. Many small giants are extremely afraid of him. Who would have thought that Lin Sun would encounter him? He's really unlucky. In this way, Qing Wenwan is abnormal, and Lin Sun is a demon. Abnormal against a demon, this battle is bound to be wonderful. I'm looking forward to Qing Wenwan's painting of Demon Lin into a bloody rose. That scene will definitely be amazing. At the foot of the mountain, the spectators were completely shocked. They had long seen Qing Wenwan's abnormal strength, and Lin Sun's strength also surprised them. Now the two met, which made many strong practitioners of ancient orthodoxies who were hostile to Lin Sun laugh gloatingly. Nothing was more exciting than the battle in front of them. At the same time, other small giants also showed different expressions on their faces. Some were playful, some were expectant, some were mocking, and some were gloating and laughing heartily. He met Qing Wenwan in the first round. This guy's luck is really bad. Zhao Jingxian couldn't help sighing faintly. She was not worried about Lin Sun. In other words, as early as in Xiao Empire, she had never worried about Lin Sun. This was not blind confidence, but she firmly believed that any opponent who underestimated Lin Sun would pay a heavy price. Similarly, in the face of any unoptimistic situation, Lin Sun never lacked the means to turn the situation around. The only thing Zhao Jingxian worried about was that Lin Sun might be forced to expose all his trump cards in advance after this battle. Trump cards were the key to winning by surprise. If they were exposed, it would inevitably arouse the vigilance of other strong practitioners. Lin Sun, what I said before still stands. As long as you kneel down and beg for mercy, maybe I will not harm your relatives and friends in a good mood. Chapter 1069. As soon as Qing Wenwan finished speaking, Lin Sun thought of Xiao Qinghe, who was regarded as a canvas and suffered cruel torture. The killing intent that had accumulated in his heart surged uncontrollably in his chest. I don't know whether God favors me or not. I only know that if you don't satisfy me this time, you won't be able to leave this battlefield. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and he said word by word. An invisible killing intent spread from his body like a tide, which changed his momentum. Qing Wenwan smiled. His feminine and enchanting face was full of madness as he said, "Demon Lin, I'll draw you a mandala flower. I'm sure you'll be satisfied." Boom! As he spoke, the two moved at the same time. Two figures turned into lightning and rushed at each other like two comets, bursting out dazzling divine light and roaring like thunder. A great battle broke out at this moment. In the battlefield, it was like two furnaces colliding, causing the void to tremble and the air to explode. The battlefield of Providence was completely filled with rolling haze and surging Taoist light. It was as vast as the ocean, and the collision of the supreme power changed the color of heaven and earth. So powerful! Comparatively speaking, this battle is undoubtedly the most intense so far. It's like a battle between the sun and the moon, and its momentum is amazing. At the foot of the mountain, all the spectators were moved. Other small giants standing on the mountain top were also paying close attention. Now they all knew how powerful Demon Lin was, but no one could give an accurate answer as to how powerful he was. Now, they might be able to find some clues in this battle. Boom! On the battlefield of Providence, the two sides suddenly separated. After a while, the place was restored to peace, and all kinds of divine light disappeared. The two figures stood in a distant confrontation, each standing on one side. Demon Lin is indeed worthy of being called the Demon Lin. I heard that you broke some records set by Yun Qin by 10 years ago. If I kill you today, does it mean that Yun Qin by 10 years ago is not as good as me today? Qing Wenjuan's eyes were surging with brilliant Taoist light flowing in them. As soon as these words came out, the experts of the heaven-reaching sword sect all looked terrible. How arrogant he was to compare Yun Qin by, who was like a god in their hearts. Jin Myun also snorted coldly. His eyes were fierce and unkind. You really think too much. Lin Sun's expression was cold. At this moment, many people noticed that even though the two of them were conversing, their imposing auras were imperceptibly rising swiftly and becoming even more terrifying. Lin Sun's clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind. It was as if a demon had awakened in his body. On the other side, the pores on Qing Wenjuan's entire body opened up while strands of divine radiance sprayed out. His entire body seemed as if flames were coiled around it, and it caused the nearby space to be warped and incinerated while his imposing aura shook the heavens. The atmosphere here had become oppressive. Even if they were very far away, it still caused many cultivators at the foot of the mountain to feel suffocated. Boom! Qing Wenjuan was the first to attack. His footsteps were calm as he stepped on the sky like a green luan dancing in the heavens. An expanse of Tao patterns appeared at the center of his palm, and it surged with scarlet-red multicolored light as it struck forward with boundlessly terrifying power. At this moment, his aura was wreaking havoc, and his palm energy was dazzling and monstrous. It was as if a god had come out, shocking everyone present. Green Luan races inherited extreme art, sky-splitting technique. An older generation figure said softly. He was moved. Almost at the same time, a large expanse of green divine light appeared on Lin Sun's side. His figure seemed illusory and ethereal, but it erupted with unparalleled spiritual fluctuations. Bang! He clenched his palm into a fist and deduced the profundities of the 9 strikes for shaking the heavens. In an instant, space collapsed while the force of his fist seemed to have penetrated through time and space and erupted onto the battlefield. A deafening sound of collision resounded, and it was like a volcano had erupted. Both of them fought intensely. They were swift and fierce like bolts of lightning while exerting force that was like a mountain. Both of them revealed extraordinary combat ability, and their grasp of timing was exquisite to the extreme. They fully displayed the might of a true peerless figure. The foot of the mountain was perfectly silent while the spectators held their breaths in concentration, and their hearts shook. Even if it was the various great figures that stood on different peaks, they revealed serious and solemn expressions at this moment, and they didn't blink in the slightest as they were deeply afraid of missing the slightest detail. Bang! Qing Wenjuan's palm was like a pair of sharp blades that were coiled with crimson-red divine flames, and they sliced and tore apart space while blazing violently. Everywhere that met the eye, the wind from his palm was like fire, and it seemed to have transformed into a sea of flames. His movements were agile like a green luan soaring through the sky, and he possessed an extreme speed that dazzled the eyes of others. Moreover, his aura was terrifying like a god that was bathed in flames. Lin Sun utilized the Ice WRM steps and similarly collided head-on with Qing Wenjuan with extreme speed. His fists were simple and natural, and they didn't carry the slightest aura of battle. But every single punch of his carried a might that shook the heavens and the earth, and he didn't dodge in the slightest. Right at this instant, the heavens and the earth were filled with the rumbling of the Tao, and it was like the furious cry of a green luan, and the shout of a fiend god resounded out. The two of them fought fiercely. Crimson divine flames and green divine radiance seethed, and they erupted with boundless light that enveloped the entire battlefield. Not bad, not bad. At this moment, Qing Wenjuan seemed to be extremely excited. His handsome and devilishly handsome face flushed with a sickly red color, and he roared with laughter while his aura grew stronger and stronger. Numerous ancient green lantern phantoms appeared around him while divine flames surged, and it was a world-shocking phenomenon. This was the embodiment of a secret technique of the great Tao. This was the might of the supreme inheritance of the Azure Phoenix clan, sky-split technique. The flames of the green lanterns could split the sky. However, even though he was strong, Lin Sun wasn't much inferior to him. Every single move he made carried boundless might that rumbled through the heavens and the earth, and the sky was in chaos. The battle between the two of them was really too shocking. It had just begun, but it had already revealed the power that far exceeded that of ordinary peerless experts. The Tao was vast and mighty, and the rays of light were monstrous. Everyone was dazzled, their hearts swayed, and they couldn't help but gasp. Compared with them, those peerless figures who hadn't been ranked on the list of junior giants were undoubtedly too dim. This undoubtedly proved that at least on the path of peerless cultivation, both Lin Sun and Qing Wenhuan had reached an astonishing height. The fact was indeed so. Qing Wenhuan's combat strength was absolutely at the top level among the 36 junior giants. Even some of the minor giants who had already won the previous battles were secretly shocked when they saw this. Many people even felt lucky that they didn't encounter these two people in the first round of the Battle of Luck, otherwise, the consequences would be hard to say. Boom! Another collision resounded. The two of them had fought for hundreds of rounds up to this point. The battle was fierce and swift, and it was completely a head-on collision. It was so fast that many practitioners couldn't even clearly capture the details of the battle. Clang! Suddenly, Qing Wenhuan took out a brilliant golden needle and stabbed it towards Lin Sun at an incredible speed. He had the sky-splitting skill and the sky-patching needle. This golden needle was his most powerful means of killing. Whoosh! In the void, the tip of the needle was like lightning, and the golden light was like rain. In an instant, the golden needle shuttled through the void, drawing thousands of sharp golden rays, like a big net, to shroud and cut Lin Sun. At this moment, even the peerless junior giants like laughing at the heavens, Yechen, and Jin Myun couldn't help but be shocked and realize the horror of the sky-patching needle. This Qing Wenhuan from the Cyan Phoenix tribe of the Shiheng world is so powerful. It seems that there are many worthy of attention in this world besides the Dongxing world. Even Yan Zhanxiu was a little surprised at this moment. Although Qing Wenhuan's performance was eye-catching before, he came from the Shiheng world after all, and was not well known in the Dongxing world. But now it seemed that he was undoubtedly an existence that couldn't be underestimated in the desperate situation. Lin Sun is a little unlucky. Yan Zhanxiu thought to himself that it was really unfortunate for him to encounter Qing Wenhuan in the first round of the Battle of Luck. But soon, Yan Zhanxiu didn't have time to think too much and focused his mind on the battlefield again. Whoosh, whoosh, the sky-patching needle glowed with golden light and danced in the air. Countless golden threads cut through the void, and they were so sharp that they seemed to be able to cut through everything. To everyone's surprise, Lin Sun was still barehanded in the face of such a murderous attack. However, the strength of his fist became majestic and boundless, like the raging waves of a boundless sea. When he punched out, merely the strength of his punch crushed the golden threads to the point they collapsed and dispersed in disorder. This was completely a method of breaking through technique with force. What was even more shocking was that Lin Sun had successfully suppressed the attack of the sky-patching needle. This caused many spectators to be moved. Qing Wenhuan had displayed an extremely abnormal combat strength, but demon god Lin actually surpassed him. Qing Wenhuan, who was in the midst of battle, seemed to be a little impatient after failing to take down Lin Sun for a long time. He suddenly let out a low roar and swung his hand fiercely. Clang! The golden needle in his hand suddenly swept out and pierced through Lin Sun's fist at an incredible speed. It pierced through his fist and brought out a wisp of scarlet blood. At the same time, a wisp of icy and piercing power spread from the wound and stabbed at Lin Sun's divine sense like a bolt of lightning. This was the power of the sky-patching needle, which could attack one's soul. Cultivators who didn't understand it would definitely suffer a great loss if they were caught off guard. Obviously, Lin Sun was also hit. What? Demon God Lin is injured? In the distance, everyone was shocked. Everyone witnessed this scene, especially those who had fought with Lin Sun before. They knew how terrifying Lin Sun was. But now, he was actually injured by Qing Wenwan. How could the sky-patching needle of the Cyan Phoenix clan be so terrifying? Wasn't it said that the true mystery of this secret method had long been lost in ancient times, and what was left was only an incomplete version? Some of the older generation couldn't stay calm either. As for the junior magnates on the mountain peak, most of them looked grave. Some of the junior magnates who had grudges against Lin Sun were also a little surprised. Qing Wenjuan's strength was also beyond their expectations. At this moment, Qing Wenjuan revealed an excited and morbid smile. Without hesitation, he manipulated the golden needle and approached Lin Sun, intending to take advantage of this opportunity to start painting. He wanted to use Lin Sun's body as the canvas and his blood as the ink to paint a blood-colored mandala. Just thinking about that bloody scene caused Qing Wenjuan's entire body to tremble with an indescribable excitement. In his view, Lin Sun's soul was destined to be seriously damaged under the assassination of the sky-patching needle. Soon, Lin Sun would become his work of painting just like how he dealt with Shao Qinghe before. However, as soon as he approached and the sky-patching needle was aimed at Lin Sun, he suddenly stiffened and felt a strong uneasiness and palpitation. At the same time, he met Lin Sun's cold eyes, which were as deep as the abyss, as if he was staring at a dead man. Chapter 1070. Tomorrow. However, Goldfish was fearful and uneasy in her heart. The goldfish had been maintaining a moderate update speed ever since the genius had started writing. Now that he had suddenly said that he was going to explode, he became exceptionally nervous. I'm afraid that when I explode, there won't be many responses from her former or current readers. I'm also afraid that if I explode, the monthly votes and data will be too pathetic and embarrassing. If that happens, it will be very embarrassing. It will also affect my enthusiasm. For a very long time, Goldfish had not asked for subscriptions or tried to break through the monthly vote. It wasn't that she didn't care. It was because there were too many trivial things in life. Her time was always out of her control. However, this time, Goldfish didn't intend to stay calm. Passion and motivation were needed in life. It was the same for writing a book. In July, Goldfish decided to explode, break through the monthly votes. Just like when she wrote about Talisman Emperor back then, she wanted to explode. Goldfish didn't know if her old friends who supported her were willing to fight alongside her. She also didn't know if her new friends who had grown up with Prodigy would be willing to support Goldfish. However, without support, would she not explode? No. Since she had exploded, even if she was fighting alone, even if she was charging forward alone, even if she seemed small and pitiful, this time, Goldfish had to fight till the end. This was the first time since Goldfish wrote Prodigy she had asked for help from her readers. Goldfish was terrified. She was afraid that no one would care about her. Therefore, in this July, those who like geniuses and who like to see Goldfish explode, please come and support the Goldfish if you have the ability. If you have the monthly votes, smash them. If you don't have the monthly votes, subscribe and leave a message of encouragement. At the very least, this would let Goldfish know that she wasn't fighting alone. Kids, the Goldfish really needs your help and support this time, and the Goldfish will explode for you. After midnight on July 1st, Goldfish will release the first update. Today is the end of the month. From July 1st onwards, children who support Goldfish, please come and smash your monthly votes. On July 1st, no matter how many monthly votes you have, Goldfish will release 5 updates. With more monthly votes accumulated, you will continue to release 5 updates on the second day. On the third day, the fourth day, as long as you have enough monthly votes, It won't be a problem for you to continuously release more. It's time to raise the sails. Chapter 1071. Didn't the power of the sky-mending needle hurt him? How could it be possible? The sky-mending needle, the most precious treasure of the Cyan Phoenix branch, was almost lost. This treasure had the power to kill the soul, which was mysterious, strange, and cruel. Anyone who was hit by it would be seriously injured even if he had a soul treasure. This was also the reason why Qing Wenwan dared to approach Lin Sun so fearlessly. But when he saw Lin Sun's eyes, Qing Wenwan realized that there was an accident this time. Without hesitation, he retreated violently. His ability to change was amazing. But how could Lin Sun, who had been waiting for a long time, let the prey escape? At the moment when Qing Wenwan retreated violently, he had already taken action. Boom! Lin Sun's punch, which gathered all his strength, suddenly burst out with infinite clear light. It was not only fast but also incomparably terrible. With a bang, Qing Wenwan was smashed to the ground. His shoulder bone was broken, and his flesh and blood were flying everywhere. The ground shook a little. The spectators were astonished and shocked. Before, they all thought that Lin Sun was injured and was likely to be suppressed. But in the blink of an eye, he had launched a counterattack. Looking at Qing Wenwan, who was smashed to the ground by a solid punch, many people felt a pain in their hearts. This blow was simply too fierce. However, it had to be said that Qing Wenjuan's reaction was extremely outstanding. After being smashed to the ground, he had no time to care about his injury and retreated immediately. At the same time, he spat out a red flame to block Lin Sun's attack. Boom! However, Lin Sun would not delay after seizing the first opportunity. He rushed forward with an unparalleled momentum. His punches were surging, and his attacks were fierce and overbearing. Puff! Soon, Qing Wenwan was hit again and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was shocked and angry. He screamed and ran the sky, splitting skill and the sky-mending needle with all his strength. Unfortunately, once the first opportunity was lost, he would fall into a passive position step by step. For a person at Lin Sun's level, he would not miss such an opportunity to suppress his opponent. For a moment, on the battlefield of Providence, Qing Wenwan kept retreating and fleeing back and forth in a mess, looking extremely embarrassed. Lin Sun, on the other hand, pressed Qing Wenwan step by step with a posture of chasing and attacking fiercely. Qing Wenwan was injured again and again. Everyone outside the arena was shocked and dumbfounded. Everything had turned around too quickly. Previously, the two of them were evenly matched, and there was no clear victor. But now, Qing Wenwan, who had just gained the upper hand, was being chased and beaten by demon god Lin. His wretched appearance left many experts in disbelief. One wrong step, and every step will be wrong. Yi Chen's eyes were as bright as the stars, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his lips. He had seen through the mystery within. I wonder how he neutralized the power of the heaven-repairing needle. More people were curious about how Lin Sun reversed the situation. The reason was simple. Restricted by the power of the undying Forbidden Land, Little Silver couldn't appear and help Lin Sun fight, but he was not affected in the sea of consciousness. Although the power of the sky-mending needle was unparalleled, it paled in comparison to Little Silver, who was a member of the spirit-eating insect clan, and was able to destroy it effortlessly. Of course, Lin Sun wouldn't be affected. Unfortunately, Qing Wenwan didn't know this. Because of this negligence, or in other words, his overconfidence in the heaven-repairing needle, Lin Sun seized the initiative. At this moment, Qing Wenwan's handsome and devilishly handsome face was completely livid. He was mad with hatred and aggrieved to the point of going mad. A small mistake had turned the situation around, which made him want to slap himself. Why was he so careless at that time? Bang! Lin Sun rushed to Qing Wenwan and swept out his fist, which almost hit his forehead. Demon God Lin, do you really think you can beat me like this? Naive. Qing Wenwan couldn't hold back anymore and roared. At this moment, his whole body was fiery red, and his breath was terrible. His body was like a volcano, emitting bright divine flames. He rushed out violently, and his palms and fingers were like wings, dancing with divine flames all over the sky, as if he was going to smash the sky. Bang! Lin Sun's decisive blow was blocked, which made his black eyes narrow. He realized that this guy was going to fight desperately. Boom! At the same time, Qin Wenjuan's entire body suddenly changed, and he transformed into a peerlessly handsome azure phoenix with jade-green feathers. His sharp claws were like gold, and his entire body seethed with divine flames. He was like a real divine bird, fluttering his wings in the void, high and mighty, disdainful and frightening. Originally, I didn't want to use my trump card to deal with you, but now, I'll let you see the real unique skill of my Cyan Phoenix clan. Qin Wenwan let out a clear cry and spread his wings like a pair of divine flame fans. The red wings were bright and dazzling. Whoosh! He swooped down, and his wings crushed the void, swift and fierce to an appalling extent. Lin Sun dodged, and a terrible explosion suddenly occurred at his original position. It was extremely turbulent, like a meteorite falling there with amazing destructive power. Some small giant's eyelids twitched. At this time, Qin Wenwan was obviously much stronger than before. He had used some kind of secret method, and his power was unpredictable. This is the 8 ultimate attacks of Cyan Phoenix, the supreme ancestral method of Cyan Phoenix. Some elders were surprised and couldn't believe it. Qin Wenjuan's performance made people have an illusion of a new understanding of him. Dodge? Haha, do you also know how to dodge? Didn't you have a good time chasing me just now? Qin Wenwan laughed wildly. His attacks became more and more violent, and each blow had great destructive power. The divine flames were like rain, burning the void and covering the whole battlefield. Seeing this, Lin Sun realized that it was impossible to hold back. A top figure like Qin Wenwan was not so easy to be suppressed. Boom! Without hesitation, Lin Sun's breath suddenly soared, and the profound meaning of Yazi's wrath was operated by him without reservation. Many strongmen's faces changed slightly. Did Demon Lin also hold back? Moreover, until now, he still hadn't used that magical broken sword. Why was that? Was it disdain or some other plot? Just when everyone was in doubt, Lin Sun had already rushed up and moved the void with ice drake step. In a flash, he collided with Qin Wenwan. Boom! In the earth-shattering collision, Qin Wenwan screamed angrily, "How can your combat power become so strong?" At this time, people finally saw clearly that in the roar of divine light, Qin Wenwan, who had turned into a Cyan Phoenix, staggered and flew backward. Its wings were askew and fluttered in the void. There was a dead silence. Whether it was the spectators at the foot of the mountain or the small giants on the top of the mountain, they all looked at Lin Sun as if he was a monster. Only now did they find that Lin Sun had been holding back in the previous battle. The breath he showed at this moment was more than twice as strong as before. No wonder Qin Wenwan would be so shocked and furious. If it was anyone else that encountered this scene, that person would probably be shocked to the point of jumping up and down. Do you think I don't have a trump card? I said that if you can't satisfy me today, you can't leave this battlefield. Lin Sun rushed forward, his black hair flying. At this moment, he seemed like a fiend god that looked down upon the world, and his entire body was enveloped by the brilliant green glow of the Tao. Originally, if he used the broken sword, it was enough to kill Qin Wenwan, but Lin Sun didn't intend to let this abnormal and cruel beast go so easily. Boom! On the battlefield, the battle became more and more fierce. However, the situation was reversed again. Lin Sun regained the dominant position. He chased after Qin Wenwan and punched him so hard that Qin Wenwan screamed angrily. It's really surprising. Laughing at the heavens couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't know what to say about Lin Sun's strength. The expressions of the others were almost the same. It was very complicated. This demon Lin was always unexpected, and this time was no exception. Qing Wenwan was abnormal enough, but who would have thought that Lin Sun still didn't reduce his demonic power? He was so fierce that he suppressed Qing Wenwan. What a loser! Seeing this, Jin Myun, Li Qingping, Go Yanjun and others were very unhappy. The stronger Lin Sun was, the more vigilant they were. Originally, they thought it would be good if they could use Qing Wenwan to defeat and eliminate Lin Sun. Who would have thought that even Qing Wenwan couldn't do it? I knew it would be like this. Zhao Jingxian shrugged her shoulders. Her clear eyes were calm, as if she was used to it. Perhaps she was the only one who understood Lin Sun's fighting style the best. If he could avoid using his trump card, he would never use it. He played the low-key style of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger to the fullest. He didn't do it on purpose. It was an extremely clever tactical strategy. If he was seen through with a single glance, it would be bad. Plop! On the battlefield, under Lin Sun's overbearing attacks, Qing Wenwan was smashed hard on the ground. His wings were stained with blood, and he spat out blood from his lips. Even his body was trembling. He struggled to get up, but Lin Sun, who had descended from the sky, kicked him in the back. He was firmly stepped on the ground, unable to move. Qing Wenwan is finished. Many people sighed. Honestly, Qing Wenwan was very strong. He was even more amazing than some of the small giants who had just won. But he met Demon Lin, who didn't play by the rules, and suffered a crushing defeat. This shocked the spectators at the foot of the mountain, and they couldn't help but feel pity. Qing Wenwan was suppressed in the first round. His ranking on the list of small giants was destined to be lower. The strong practitioners of the Cyan Phoenix clan all looked terrible, and their eyes were about to burst into flames. Originally, they hoped that Qing Wenwan could be ranked in the top 10 of the list of small giants, but now it was impossible for Qing Wenwan to raise his head. He was suppressed under Lin Sun's feet in a humiliating way, unable to move. You like painting very much, and I like roast chicken wings very much. Lin Sun opened his mouth and said something that made everyone feel puzzled. How could he say such nonsense at a time like this? But soon they understood. Lin Sun kicked the Cyan Phoenix transformed by Qing Wenwan and used his hands to pluck off all the feathers of Qing Wenwan in a short time. In the process, Qing Wenwan was so angry that he almost coughed up blood. He cursed angrily, but it was doomed to be in vain. In just a few breaths, Qing Wenjuan's feathers were plucked off, and his whole body was clean and smooth. A pair of fleshy wings as crystal as snow was more than 30 meters long. What a wonderful ingredient! Lin Sun's black eyes brightened and he exclaimed. Chapter 1072. Qing Wenwan was so ashamed and angry that his face turned green. He was the current holy son of Cyan Phoenix branch. He had a high status and was trained as a future lord. When had he ever been humiliated like this? Under the watchful eyes of countless talents of his generation, he was trampled on the ground and stripped of all his feathers, which made him choose to commit suicide. Yes, commit suicide. In any case, there was no true death on the undying divine mountain. Rather than being humiliated and tortured, it was better to die as soon as possible. As for fighting for luck and ranking, Qing Wenwan was not in the mood to care. If he continued to be humiliated, even if he lived in the future, he was destined to be a stain on his life. He would be laughed at by others and would never be able to lift his head again. However, when Qing Wenwan was about to take action, he suddenly found that his body was imprisoned by an obscure force. He couldn't even lift a finger, let alone commit suicide. This was the power of Baxia prohibition. Before, Shao Qinghe was defeated by torture and humiliation. How could Lin Sun let Qing Wenwan escape early this time? Even if it was suicide, it was not allowed. Demon Lin, do you really want to be my enemy? You should know that life and death can't be determined on the immortal mountain. If you go too far, Don't you worry that I will pay you back tenfold? Qing Wenjuan's handsome and enchanting face was twisted and ferocious as he threatened. Bang! The back of his head was hit so hard that he saw stars. His head felt dizzy and painful. Then he heard Lin Sun's calm voice. I haven't eaten roasted cyan phoenix wings yet. I must have a try today. Qing Wenjuan was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Although he was a pervert, he could only torture his opponents. But Demon Lin Sun wanted to eat him. Lin Sun didn't hesitate at all. Holding the broken sword, he cut off the 2 wings of cyan phoenix, which were more than 30 meters long. This pair of wings was bare, sparkling and translucent snow white, the flesh very rich. Lin Sun first activated the power of water, condensed water, and washed the blood stains on the wings. Then he took out a bronze spear from the storage ring and strung the wings together. During this entire process, Qing Wenjuan was in so much pain that he almost fainted. However, compared to this, the humiliation and resentment in his heart grew even greater. Everyone outside was stunned. What was Demon God Lin doing? Could it be that he was really planning to roast the azure phoenix wings to eat? Their minds were in a daze, and it felt very surreal. Boom! Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Lin Sun's palm burst into flames and covered the skewered cyan phoenix wings. He skillfully roasted them, and from time to time he rotated the bronze spear to avoid being burnt. My God! The saint of my azure phoenix bloodline is actually viewed as food? What a shame! At the foot of the mountain, the eyes of some people of Cyan Phoenix clan turned red. They couldn't wait to rush up and fight Lin Sun. Qing Wenjuan being humiliated like this made them seethe with anger. The others all felt their scalps go numb, their eyes staring straight. How ancient and terrifying was the Green Luan race. This was especially true for Qing Wenjuan. He was the holy child of the race's younger generation, his status venerated, yet he was actually reduced to food. Lin Sun's movements were swift. Moreover, he used the peerless Taoist method fire-smelting galaxy to roast the wings, and the effect was absolutely astonishing. In just a moment, the pair of Cyan Phoenix wings was roasted to a golden and glossy state. The aroma was rich, and the oil dripped into the flames, making sizzling sounds. The most miraculous thing was that the roasted wings were still glistening with auspicious light, and an alluring aroma of meat spread in spirals across the battlefield of Providence. The quality of this meat is really extraordinary. Lin Sun took a deep breath. He was also a little surprised. The aroma of the roasted Cyan Phoenix wings was unexpectedly wonderful. For ordinary people, eating a mouthful of it could prolong their lives. It was a treasure of great nourishment. Even for cultivators, being able to eat a mouthful of pure-blooded Cyan Phoenix meat was absolutely no different from gnawing on elixirs. At the beginning of cultivation, cultivators would often use the blood and flesh of various divine birds and fierce beasts to temper their physique and foundation. The rich aroma overflowed, and the Cyan Phoenix wings were overflowing with brilliant rays of light. The other cultivators couldn't help but swallow their saliva secretly. This sort of ingredient was absolutely a treasure of the heavens and the earth that was a great nourishment. At this moment, Qing Wenjuan was already angered to the point of coughing up large mouthfuls of blood. He'd gone completely mad, and his Dao heart was on the verge of collapse while he roared furiously and screamed repeatedly. However, Lin Sun paid no attention to him at all, and he continued roasting the meat. As soon as he finished roasting the Cyan Phoenix wings, he swiftly chopped off a pair of claws, washed them clean, and started roasting them again. Fiend God Lin, you'll die a horrible death. At the foot of the mountain, the experts of the Cyan Phoenix race were angered to the point of roaring loudly, and they were on the verge of going mad. The other spectators from the various ancient sects were speechless. An unparalleled battle had been reduced to a barbecue in the end. Moreover, it happened on the battlefield of Providence, so anyone would probably be dumbstruck if they saw it. He really is a fiend god that stops at nothing. The cultivators that were hostile towards Lin soon shuddered with fear and felt a chill run down their spines. Isn't he afraid of being stuffed to death by taking a genius that stepped foot onto the peak of the divine Tao realm as food? As for the junior magnates, they were all shocked by this scene with different expressions. Qing Wenwan was really miserable. He had thought that it would be a misfortune for fiend god Lin to meet him, but who would have thought that it would be the real misfortune for him to meet fiend god Lin? If this news spread to the outside world, even if Qing Wenwan could still live, how could he raise his head in the future? Anyone who saw it would be extremely shameful to think that he had once become fiend god Lin's food. Puff! Qing Wenwan was so angry that he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood after suffering such humiliation and torture. His eyes rolled back and he passed out directly. A dignified genius with a strong state of mind was so angry that he passed out. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they probably wouldn't have believed it. Clatter as Qing Wenwan passed out, a force of rules and order emerged and took him out of the battlefield of Providence. Even the cyan phoenix wings and cyan phoenix claws that had just been roasted by Lin Sun were taken away. Lin Sun, who had planned to have a big meal, was stunned and regretted it. He sighed, "Why do you compete with me for food? I haven't even tasted a bite." Everyone outside the arena was completely speechless. Was fiend god Lin a foodie? In fact, Lin Sun really didn't want to eat Qing Wenwan. He just used this method to avenge Shaoqinghe. Whoosh! When Lin Sun returned to the Taoist altar on the summit, there were two more forces of fate on the dragon tablet where he was. One came from Qing Wenjuan's dragon tablet. The other came from the forbidden land of immortality. It could be clearly seen that the 4 dragon claws on the dragon tablet showed illusory golden luster at this moment, which complemented the dragon's tail. At this moment, the junior magnates on the other summits looked at Lin Sun with a hint of fear. Qing Wenjuan's tyrannical combat strength made many junior magnates nervous. They were secretly glad that they didn't meet him in the first round. Some junior magnates were even sure that if they met Qing Wenwan, even if they tried their best, they would at most be injured. It would be extremely difficult to win. Fortunately, fiend god Lin suppressed Qing Wenwan. However, Qing Wenwan was eliminated, leaving behind the even more terrifying fiend god Lin. I can't fight with Lin Sun head-on. I should use my strength to overcome his weakness. Fiend god Lin has already displayed the power of water and fire. His punches, body movements, and palm techniques are all marvelous and powerful. If I want to defeat him, I have to. What's terrifying is that he hasn't used that broken blade. Is his trump card really just this? These little giants were all pondering in their hearts, silently recalling the details of the battle just now, using this to verify and compare. As the saying went, know yourself and know your enemy, and you can win 100 battles. Although Lin Sun was powerful, they also had their own means and trump card. What they had to consider now was how to effectively suppress Lin Sun if they met him. In this battle, the change happened when fiend god Lin dissolved the sky-repairing needle. He seemed to be injured, but in fact, he wasn't affected at all. The junior magnates like laughing at the heavens. Yechen, Jinmyun, and Yu Lingkong had more considerations. If they were of equal strength, the factors that would affect the outcome of the battle would fall on other aspects. However, when they thought of how Qing Wenwan had been suppressed by Lin Sun despite having the upper hand with 8 supreme strikes of Cyan Phoenix, they couldn't figure it out. Back then, Lin Sun's combat strength had instantly risen to an unprecedented level. Had he deliberately held back his strength, or had he used some secret technique to stimulate his potential? This lad definitely has a trump card. In the end, they came to a conclusion. This made them look at Lin Sun with even more subtle expressions. It wasn't terrifying to have a powerful opponent. What was terrifying was not being able to see through the opponent. Without a doubt, in the eyes of these junior magnates, the strength Lin Sun had previously displayed had aroused their vigilance and fear. Of course, this wasn't because they were afraid. They each had their own trump cards to rely on. In a real battle, they might be able to suppress Lin Sun. The 18th battle began. It was Ah Lu who stepped onto the battlefield. In just 10 minutes, his opponent was suppressed. He was beaten to the point that almost all his bones were fractured. He had no choice but to admit defeat. Ah Lu's ferocious and domineering fighting style that crushed his opponent left everyone's jaws dropping to the ground. No one would have thought that this barbarian who had come out of nowhere would be a brutal figure on the path of sanctification of the body. This was already the last battle of the first round. There were a total of 36 top figures on the junior magnates list. After the first round of one-on-one battles, there were 18 victors and 18 eliminated. The ranking of the eliminated would be based on the amount of luck of the great path they had obtained from the coiling dragon steel and their performance on the battlefield of Providence. The victors would then proceed to the second round of battles. Whoosh, however, before the second round of battles began, colorful rain fell from the sky above the heads of Lin Sun and the other junior magnates, bathing them in it. This was the divine spiritual rain unique to the immortal mountain. P.S. From last night until dawn, many people have tipped, voted, and left messages to encourage Goldfish. I'm really touched. Needless to say, the only thing Goldfish could do was write more words to repay the trust and support of her friends. Brothers and sisters, if you have tickets, please continue to spend money and make an earth-shattering scene. Around 3:00 in the afternoon. Chapter 1073. The divine rain could restore a practitioner's injury and consumption to the peak state in an instant. Before the first round of battles began, a rain of deities had descended. Otherwise, no matter how outstanding a genius was, they wouldn't be able to withstand it if they continued to fight. Feeling the recovery of his cultivation, Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion. The power of rules and order of the immortal mountain was really too magical and incredible. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun began to think about the next duels. After the first round of duels, the 18 top talents had been ranked in the top 18 of the list of junior giant. In other words, the next duels would be for the top 18 positions. This kind of competition would undoubtedly be more dangerous and difficult. After all, it was extremely difficult to be ranked in the list of junior giant. Those who could stand out in the first round of duels were absolutely top-notch existences. Of course, there were exceptions, such as Chu Beihai, who was extremely unlucky to meet Sword Devil Yichen, and Qing Wenwan, who also met Lin Sun tragically. According to their real combat strength, if they weren't a little unlucky, there should be no problem for them to be ranked in the top 18 of the list of junior giant. However, this was the competition. Luck was also a kind of strength, or else these heaven's favorites wouldn't have gathered on the immortal mountain and fought to the death for the fortune of the great path. What's more, without luck, how could one become a king? In the second round, each junior giant has 3 chances to fight. Those who win 3 battles are destined to be among the best and can enter the final duel. Those who win 2 battles and lose 1 battle, even if they can pass the second round, their ranking can't be too high. Those who win 1 battle and lose 2 battles are destined to be eliminated. Those who lose 3 battles are destined to be eliminated. Lin Sun pondered and analyzed the rules of the second round of duels. There was no need for others to tell him. The power of rules and order of the immortal mountain had already imprinted the rules of duels on the coiling dragon steel. He could understand it with a little perception. According to the rules, no matter who you are destined to find an opponent who is sure to win. However, each person only has 3 chances to fight, and only 1 chance to choose an opponent. The remaining 2 chances will be passively accepted by others. In this way, there are many variables. Lin Sun murmured in his heart. There were indeed many variables. For example, if Lin Sun appeared, he could naturally choose an opponent to fight. But in the same way, others could also choose Lin Sun to fight. This made it very difficult to determine which opponent he would encounter. Of course, he could also reject challenges from others. However, he had to pay a price for refusing. Every time he refused, a portion of the great Tao luck on his coiling dragon's steel would be taken by the other party. If it wasn't necessary, then no matter who it was, they were bound to not choose to refuse. After all, the karmic luck of the Grand Tao wasn't easy to come by, so who would be willing to give it up? While Lin was thinking, other small giants were also analyzing in their mind. There were too many uncertainties and variables in the second round. No matter who it was, no one dared to be careless or underestimate it. Lin. As for Jin Myun, Li Qingping, Yu Lingkong and Go Yanjun, the first opponent that came to their mind after they understood the rules was Lin Sun. For different reasons, they all regarded Lin Sun as their enemy and wished to kill him as soon as possible. However, after calming down, they were somewhat hesitant. Witnessing Lin Sun's performance when he guarded the mountain and witnessing the battle where he suppressed Qing Wenwan, they were shocked and fearful of Lin Sun's combat strength. In the second round, there was only one chance to initiate a challenge, and the other 2 rounds were full of variables. In order to prevent the worst from happening, the wisest way was to first choose an opponent that they could definitely win. What should we do? The rules of the second round are really disgusting. Whatever, I'll just adapt to the situation when the time comes. If there's really a chance to challenge Demon God Lin, then fight. Jin Myun and the other 3 had different thoughts and made different decisions. This was to judge the situation. No one who could come this far was stupid. But in the end, no one made a foolproof plan, including Lin Sun, because there were too many variables in the rules of the second round. No one knew who would be the first to fight, and no one knew who would take the initiative to challenge. Under such circumstances, to a large extent, they could only adapt to the situation. For example, Jin Myun and the other 3 wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to suppress Lin Sun. However, there were only 3 chances in the second round, and one of them was Lin Sun's decision. In this way, among the 4 of them, no matter who took the initiative or who took the initiative, at least one of them would not have the chance to fight with Lin Sun. In the worst case, they might not even have the chance to fight with Lin Sun. At the foot of the mountain, the spectators were also analyzing, but in the end they all had a headache. There were too many variables. Suddenly, Lin Sun, who was thinking, narrowed his eyes. The next moment, he was moved to the central battlefield by an invisible power of rules and order. Obviously, the curtains had been drawn on the second round, and he was the first to fight. Seeing this, the expressions of Jin Myun and the others changed slightly. Demon God Lin was the first to fight, and he was destined to choose one of them to fight. There was no need to think about it. At the foot of the mountain, the spectators were also surprised. Demon God Lin was the first to fight? Who would he choose to fight? Go Yanjun. Zhao Jingxian thought to herself. On the battlefield of Providence, Lin Sun's black eyes swept across. Every junior tycoon who looked at him had different expressions. Some were eager to fight, some were fearful, and some were dignified. Some even avoided looking at him, as if they were afraid of being chosen by Lin Sun. When Lin Sun looked at Jin Myun, the latter snorted coldly, and a sharp sword light burst out of his eyes. When Lin Sun looked at Yu Lingkong, the latter's face was cold, and his eyes were filled with terrifying hatred. When Lin Sun looked at Li Qingping, the latter's expression was cold, and a provocative arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. Lin Sun paused for a moment, and finally moved his eyes away, and fell on Go Yanjun. "Puppy, come over here." He waved his hand with a warm smile, as if he was summoning his pet. Sure enough, Zhao Jingxian smiled knowingly. Her clear and beautiful face was like a lotus after the rain, fresh and refined. This guess came from understanding, and it was also a kind of cognition that had never been wrong until now. The others more or less secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Honestly speaking, no one wanted to encounter Demon God Lin in the first battle. If they clashed with him, they might be able to win, but it would be extremely difficult. Of course, people like Yechun and Laughing at the Heavens were not affected at all. This came from their absolute confidence in their own strength. Whether they took the initiative to challenge or accepted the challenge passively, there was nothing to be afraid of. Lin Sun, do you know that you're courting death? Go Yenjin's face was gloomy. Being chosen by Lin Sun made him very uncomfortable. Was he a pushover in Lin Sun's eyes? Puppy, don't just bark. Come over here if you have the guts, Lin Sun said casually. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lin Sun repeatedly called him a puppy, which made Go Yenjin's killing intent surge. He could no longer tolerate it. He suddenly roared to the sky, and with a flash, he rushed to the battlefield of Providence. Since you can't wait to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Go Yenjin's expression was grim. He was dressed in a black robe, and his body was surging with violent and wanton bloody light. He was like an Asura from hell, and his power was extremely terrifying. In an instant, everyone's gazes converged on him. Go Yenjin's methods might not be as abnormal as Qing Wenjuan's, but in terms of brutality, Qing Wenjuan couldn't compare. Countless geniuses had been torn apart by him while he was guarding the mountain earlier, and his brutal and bloody combat methods had long since left a deep impression on the spectators. Bang! As soon as he stepped onto the battlefield, Go Yenjin attacked. Obviously, he couldn't restrain his killing intent any longer, and he took a step forward, causing the void to become chaotic. He was like an Asura. One could clearly see that his long hair had actually instantly turned blood red, and his eyes were scarlet red as if they were burning. His entire body's might was ostentatious and ruthless to the extreme. Slash! A long and narrow blood-red blade had suddenly appeared in his hand, and it flashed explosively through the void like a river of blood from the netherworld as it swept over. Rumble! The bloody light there blazed and rumbled incessantly, and the ghastly and overbearing killing intent through the wind and clouds in all directions. So strong! This is the strength of the Black Asura Dao? It's really terrifying. Everyone outside the battlefield held their breath with astonishment in their eyes. As soon as Go Yenjin attacked, he had already used his strongest means. Obviously, he had already known Lin Sun's fighting strength, and it was useless to test and hold back. It's time to use some other means. In fact, Lin Sun still had absolute confidence to kill Go Yenjin without using the broken blade. But in that case, he had to operate the profound of anger of Yazi and 9 strikes for shaking heaven to the extreme, which would be too shocking. Each of his trump cards was reserved so that no one could see through him. Clang! The broken blade, as white as snow, flashed in the air, and the surface of the blade was flowing with obscure Taoist patterns. In an instant, the sound of the blade resounded through the world like a tide. Reaching for the stars, Lin Sun's figure rushed violently, and the broken blade chopped down in the void under the control of his huge and unparalleled spiritual awareness. Bang! With a violent collision, the void in the battlefield was completely chaotic, as if the sun and the moon had collided together. The surging divine light spread, making the world roar. Kill. After one blow, the two didn't decide the winner. Without hesitation, they attacked again and exerted their own fighting strength. On the battlefield, it was like a bloody Asura and a demon were fighting for hegemony. They fought fiercely, and ghosts cried and gods howled. It was as if they had come to hell. How terrifying! If a half-step King Realm expert approached, he would be killed in an instant. Is this the true power of the pinnacle? The spectators trembled in their hearts. Many people couldn't imagine that the confrontation of the supreme power would be so powerful and nature-defying, which completely broke their inherent understanding. Compared with this, the previous confrontation between Lin Sun and Qing Wenjuan seemed inferior. Chapter 1074. Go Yenjin seemed to have transformed into an Asura of hell. His blood-red hair was burning, and his whole body was surging with blood-red light. Along with his attack, numerous phantoms of Asuras, Yikshas, and demons appeared in the void, and they roared at the heavens and the earth. In a trance, it seemed to have transformed into a purgatory, and Go Yenjin was the master, causing many spectators to tremble. Lin Sun's figure was ethereal, and the broken blade was like a heaven-defying weapon that emitted a myriad of starlight. It was like a waterfall of stars sweeping down from the sky, fierce, overbearing, and invincible. The two of them fought in the center of the battlefield, dazzling everyone and causing them to tremble in fear. Who do you think will win if they continue fighting like this? Go Yenjin uses the power of the Great Way of Black Sea Azura and the Sunluo blood conversion scripture. Its lethality is shocking, so he has a higher chance of winning. That broken blade in Fiend God Lin's hand is a divine weapon. It's mighty, profound, and unfathomable. Moreover, he has already attained the Tao of water to the state of Tao truth. Every strike of his possesses tremendous and indestructible might. In my opinion, he'll probably have the last laugh. Actually, it's best if both of them are injured. Go Yenjin is disgusting, but isn't Demon God Lin also disgusting? Discussions arose, and the spectators held their own opinions. Boom. In the battlefield, Go Yenjin's eyes were scarlet. After a head-on collision with Lin Sun, he couldn't help but sneer. Lin Sun, you still intend to hold back your trump card at this time? Bring it on if you have any means. Don't make me look down on you. As he spoke, a blood-red whip suddenly appeared in his empty left hand. It was divided into 72 sections like a spine. With a slight shake, the whip shadows rippled in the void, and they evolved into phantoms of Azuras and Yikshas that attacked Lin Sun. Azura whip. In an instant, Go Yenjin's combat strength skyrocketed again. His saber and whip attacks were like a storm that covered the sky and the earth, causing the expressions of many small giants to change slightly. At the same time, Lin Sun also felt great pressure. Compared to Qing Wenwan, Go Yenjin was obviously much stronger. It wasn't because his combat strength was stronger than Go Yenjin's, but the power of the Great Way of Black Sea Azura that he mastered was a special Great Way that was one of the 99 Great Ways on the Supreme Tao list. Bang bang bang! The broken blade was like a flowing light. After defusing the opponent's attack, Lin was also shaken back more than 30 meters. This caused all the spectators to gasp. They'd never imagined that Go Yenjin would actually be ferocious to such an extent that even demonic god Lin seemed to be on the verge of being suppressed. But Lin Sun's expression was calm. Inexplicable coldness surged in his black eyes and he said, "A broken blade is enough to deal with you, a son of a bitch." Boom. On the battlefield, the two of them once again fought in close combat. The sky darkened and the earth darkened. The surroundings were covered in a boundless bloody mist, and all sorts of phantoms could be seen. At this point in the battle, what they were competing on was their foundations on the absolute path of the Tao. This sort of accumulation wasn't closely related to one's cultivation. Instead, it was related to the great Tao that one had grasped, the martial Tao secret techniques that one had grasped, and one's own combat experience and awareness. On the other hand, in terms of the foundation of the great Tao, Go Yenjin's performance was undoubtedly more dazzling. Every strike of his blade and whip was like an Azura from hell conquering the heavens and the earth, and it was filled with unimaginable destructive force. On the contrary, Lin Sun fought with the broken blade from beginning to end. Although it was extremely fierce and domineering, his fighting means seemed to be too simple. Of course, this was just the performance on the surface. No one would be stupid enough to think that Lin Sun was only capable of this. Clang! After another collision, an ancient bloody rune appeared around Go Yenjin's body. With a frightening divine power, it merged with the bloody sharp blade in his hand. In an instant, dozens of Azura souls rushed out of the bloody sharp blade. They were well armed and fierce, and their murderous spirit pierced through the world. This was a kind of fatal blow, known as the forbidden secret power of the Sunluo blood conversion scripture. It was said that if it was used by a real Azura, it was enough to make ghosts and gods despair. Lin Sun, I'd like to see how you can block this blow. Go Yinjin laughed with his bloody hair flying in the air. He looked like a great Asura galloping in the purgatory. Don't you want to know my trump card? I'll satisfy you. A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. With a buzzing sound, the broken blade rushed into the sky, and the obscure Taoist runes suddenly flashed on the blade. In an instant, people only felt a tingling pain in front of their eyes, as if a lightning tore the chaos and appeared in the world. It was so bright and blazing that people dared not to look at it directly. Crack! A long gap was torn in the sky above the battlefield. Then, everything seemed to be still, and all sounds and movements seemed to disappear. Only a flash of lightning-like resplendent saber light shot out from the silence. Silence cut. At this time, Lin Sun finally used the fourth cut of the 6 cuts of Tianyuan. Puff, 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 puff. More than a dozen Azura war god phantoms that charged forward were instantly slashed apart. Their bodies exploded and turned into a rain of light that fluttered in the air. What a powerful strike! Quite a few people's hearts trembled. They were stunned by the power of this strike. Go Yenjin's scarlet eyes shrank and then he laughed. Is this your strongest skill? Just so. He rushed forward at a high speed without retreating. His whole body flashed with bloodlight. With a long roar, he launched another fierce attack. Before, he was a little afraid of Lin Sun because he couldn't figure out Lin Sun's trump card. But now, he roughly knew Lin Sun's trump card, and the trace of fear in his heart disappeared completely. He ran the power of Black Nightmare Azura Path and Sunluo Blood Scripture to the extreme. He became more and more powerful. At this time, they had fought for more than 500 rounds. It was time to decide the winner. Go Yenjin's scarlet eyes were full of killing intent. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Seeing this, Lin Sun stood still. His black eyes were deep, and the figure of Go Yenjin was reflected in his pupils. He pressed his fingers together. Whoosh! In an instant, a ray of bright light swept out from the broken blade. This slash seemed illusory, swift like a bolt of lightning, and filled with unimaginable destructive force. It was too fast. It seemed to break the shackles of time and space and penetrate the shackles of heaven and earth. When this cut swept out, most people outside the battlefield had no time to react. Even Go Yenjin only noticed it when the slash approached. Then, his hair stood on end, and his scalp almost exploded from shock. Almost driven by instinct, he made a defense. Unfortunately, it was still a step late. With a puff, he flew upside down with his left arm cut off. On his chest there was a straight wound. His skin and flesh were torn, and his bones were vaguely visible. Scarlet blood poured out. With a plop, his body rolled to the ground and screamed painfully. At this moment, the whole audience was silent. Everyone's eyes were wide open with a look of horror and disbelief. It was really too fast. Before, Go Yenjin had gained the upper hand. His offensive was like a gale and his figure was like Azura at night, violent and wanton, attracting the attention of the audience. But in the blink of an eye, he was seriously injured. Many people still didn't believe it and couldn't help rubbing their eyes, thinking that they were dazzled. On the other hand, the hearts of even more people shook, and they felt a strand of indescribable terror. That slash from before was actually unable to be captured by them, and this undoubtedly proved that the speed of that slash had arrived at an astounding level. But Go Yenjin was seriously injured by this attack, which showed that this attack was not only fast, but also terrifying. This was life and death cut. A snap of the fingers was 60 moments, and a moment was 900 lives and death. Life and death cut was derived from the essence of life and death in an instant. Life and death could be separated in an instant. Its speed and fierceness could be called unparalleled. It was absolutely the strongest attack of 6 cuts of Sky Yuan that Lin Sun had mastered at present. Lin Sun hadn't really used this move since he comprehended it. It was the first time that he used it on Go Yenjin. Of course, Lin Sun still had some reservations. Otherwise, if he integrated the power of Yazi's fury, fighting Saint Method and Star Obliteration devouring Wei into this attack, the power would be far more than this. But even so, Go Yanjun had been seriously injured. How could it be? Go Yanjun was shocked and angry. His face was pale and he was panting. He crawled on the ground and couldn't stand up. The skin injury was not terrible. What was terrible was that the power of the cut was so fierce that it rushed into his body and raged, causing him to suffer far more serious injuries than what he looked like. This was what frightened Go Yanjun the most. What was the power of that cut? How could it be so horrible? How could Lin Sun give Go Yanjun a chance to breathe? He rushed to Go Yanjun without hesitation and was about to capture him. But Go Yanjun let out a vicious grin, and his whole body was steaming with bloody light, exuding an extremely dangerous aura. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. He suddenly stopped and then rushed to the back. At the same time, he ran the broken sword with all his strength to defend in front of him. Even if I lose, I will drag you down with me. Go Yanjun roared, and his body exploded under the horrified gaze of the crowd, like a volcano that had been silent for countless years erupting at this moment. The whole battlefield was covered by endless bloody light, which made the world shake and produced a deafening roar. It was so horrible that Go Yanjun used some kind of forbidden skill to self-destruct. No one had expected this. However, this move was cruel enough. Under the restriction of the immortal mountain, it was impossible for him to die completely even if he self-destructed. In this way, it was enough to give Lin Sun a fatal blow. Whether it was the spectators at the foot of the mountain or the small giants on the top of the mountain, they couldn't calm down at this moment. This battle was so dangerous and terrible that people felt their souls trembling and palpitating when they saw it from afar. Especially Go Yanjun's self-destruction at the end. It shocked those small giants and made them gasp. Many people secretly rejoiced that they weren't fighting against Go Yanjun this time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Is Demon Lin still alive? In the shocking and palpitating atmosphere, many people fixed their eyes on the battlefield of Providence, where bloody light was steaming and full of destructive aura. I'm afraid it's over, Jin Myun, Li Qingping, and Yu Lingkong couldn't help but gloat. Go Yanjun was a pinnacle existence among the absolute peak figures. How could the power of his self-destruction be so easily blocked? P.S. It's been updated 4 times. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your support, votes, and messages. Chapter 1075. No one expected Go Yanjun to really self-destruct, including Zhao Jingxian. Her heart couldn't help but constrict when she witnessed this scene, and her fair and slender hands couldn't help but clench tightly while her clear eyes stared fixedly at the battlefield of karmic luck. Even though she was extremely confident in Lin Sun, she couldn't help but worry at this moment. His methods are too despicable. It's a disgrace to be ranked with him on the minor giants list. Yi Chen frowned as disgust rose in his heart. It was just a battle for the minor giants list. Everyone could rely on their own methods, but Go Yanjun had done such a sinister and vicious thing. Yi Chen didn't like it. Unscrupulous and has no bottom line. This Go Yanjun really isn't a good person. It's a pity for Demon God Lin. If he's eliminated, the following battles won't be interesting. Laughing at the heavens side. At the foot of the mountain, the sects that were hostile to Lin Sun were eager for him to be eliminated, while the neutral sects were shocked by Go Yanjun's ruthlessness. However, it made sense after thinking about it. The Black Sea Heavenly Dog clan had a bad reputation, and they were notorious. However, there were many reasons why they could survive in the ancient Desolation region until now. Most importantly, this clan was vengeful and vicious. Not only were they vicious to their enemies, but they were even more vicious to themselves. Just like this battle, even though Go Yanjun had been defeated, he had already displayed his ferocity. If anyone met him in the outside world in the future, they would think about what had happened today. No one would be willing to go against such a ruthless person who dared to exchange his life for another. "Look, Demon God Lin is still alive!" someone suddenly exclaimed. At the same time, everyone who had fixed their eyes on the battlefield of Providence also saw that as the bloody light faded, a figure appeared. It was Lin Sun. However, he looked like he was bathed in blood. His face was pale, his clothes were tattered, and he was coughing violently. He looked miserable, but he was still alive. Everyone was seething as if they had witnessed a miracle. "He's still alive?" Jin Myun and the rest were shocked and in disbelief. Originally, they were still gloating, but now it was as if they had eaten a dead fly. There was no need to mention how uncomfortable it was. Impossible! At the foot of the mountain, the members of the Black Sea Tengu race roared. Their eyes were red. Go Yenjin had paid such a huge price, but he still couldn't pull the other party down. This was unacceptable to them. What a pity! The ancient orthodoxies that were hostile to Lin Sun could not help but shake their heads. They felt depressed. This demon god Lin's life was really tough. "I knew you wouldn't be eliminated, but you were seriously injured." Zhao Jingxian breathed a sigh of relief, and couldn't help worrying about Lin Sun. At this time, there was no god spirit rain to help heal his injuries and recover his strength. In this way, once Lin Sun was targeted by his opponent in the next duel, his situation was bound to be not optimistic. Sure enough, in an instant, Zhao Jingxian keenly noticed that some small giants looked at Lin Sun subtly. It was as if an experienced hunter had set his eyes on his prey. It was especially so for Jin Myun, Li Qingping, Yu Lingkong, and the others. They didn't conceal their killing intent at all and were eager to make a move. "If I have a chance to fight first, I'll definitely choose one of them to fight first so that Lin Sun can have more time to recover his strength." Zhao Jingxian secretly made up his mind. Suddenly, Alu, who was on another mountain, shouted, "Devil God Lin, you can't be a coward. I, Alu, only have you and Xiao Qinghe as friends in the East Victory region. If I have the chance to attack, then I'll surely help you get rid of an opponent." Jin Myun and the others immediately looked gloomy. This barbarian's words were obviously aimed at them. Almost at the same time, Sword Devil Yechen also spoke. "Lin Sun, do you need help? If you're eliminated, wouldn't it be too unpleasant for me to drink alone?" This was the second time he had spoken up for Lin Sun. He was complaining about the injustice. Jin Myun and the others looked even more gloomy. They didn't expect that Yechen would value Lin Sun so much. On the battlefield, Lin Sun stopped coughing, wiped off the blood stain on the corner of his mouth, and said with a smile, "No need. It's just a minor injury. It's not a problem for me." What a boast! Many spectators almost rolled their eyes. Even a fool could see that demon god Lin was covered in blood and his breath was on the verge of disorder. How could this be a minor injury? He's afraid of making a fool of himself and being targeted. After all, there are still 2 more matches. Injured, he's destined to be the best prey. Some people analyzed and appeared very confident, as though they had seen through Lin Sun's thoughts. Lin Sun didn't say much and returned to the Taoist altar at the summit. However, just as his figure landed, he staggered and his body swayed as he coughed violently. Look, he can't hold on much longer, right? If someone were to make a move now, they would definitely be able to defeat Demon God Lin easily. Many spectators became excited. There were also people who sighed. Go Yenjin was too ruthless. Not only did he self-destruct, he even caused Demon God Lin to suffer. Demon God Lin originally had a chance to strive for the highest ranking, but now it was likely impossible. Lin Sun ignored them. He sat cross-legged on the ground, took out elixirs, and poured them into his mouth like they were free. This made people even more certain that Demon God Lin's injuries must be extremely serious. Only Zhao Jingxian was a little suspicious. In the past, no matter how serious his injuries were, Lin Sun would never show it so obviously. He would rather endure it than let others see any clues. How are your injuries? She couldn't help but transmit her voice to him. Lin soon coughed repeatedly, his face pale. He said with difficulty, I'm already in this state. Can't you tell, really? Zhao Jingxuan's clear eyes widened, feeling a little nervous. At least, it shouldn't be a problem for me to last until the end of the second round, right? Lin Sun blinked. Although his face was pale, there was a hint of a smile in his black eyes. You're such a jerk. Zhao Jingxian glared at him fiercely, her tone angry. However, the worry between her eyebrows faded and was replaced by a touch of joy. Don't make a sound. I'd like to see who can't help but jump out first, Lin Sun hurriedly transmitted his voice. Zhao Jingxian rolled her eyes and said, How long are you going to pretend? It's best if I can pretend until the end. Lin Sun's words were originally a little sinister and black-bellied, but he said it matter-of-factly. Zhao Jingxuan's expression was strange as she nodded inconspicuously. However, she was muttering in her heart, I haven't seen him for several years. When did this guy become so sinister? He couldn't have really been led astray by Old Toad, could he? While they were talking, Lin Sun's coiling dragon steel suddenly gained 2 strands of Great Way luck. One belonged to the reward of the immortal god Mountain. The other strand came from the defeated Go Yenjin. However, this strand of karmic luck of the Grand Tao seemed to be exceptionally strong. In just an instant, it actually caused the dragon section on the stone steel to light up with a bright golden glow, and it was extraordinary and miraculous. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed in surprise. At the same time, there was an uproar in the field. It turned out that the power of Great Way luck that lingered on the coiling dragon steel on the Taoist altar where Go Yenjin originally stood had all disappeared at this moment. He used a forbidden method and violated the rules and order of the immortal god Mountain. He was disqualified from the second round. That is to say, his ranking in the first round will also be affected, and it is very likely that he will fall out of the top 18? That's for sure. Similar things have happened in the past. Demon Lin got a blessing in disguise. The Great Way luck that was originally obtained by Go Yenjin now belongs to Demon Lin. There was a burst of discussion, and many people looked at Lin Sun with complicated gazes. Compared to the Great Way luck on the coiling dragon steel, Lin Sun could undoubtedly be ranked first. Of course, the battle for luck was not over yet. Being ranked first now might not be able to maintain it in the end. Some of the small giants who originally saw Lin Sun as their prey could not control their impulses at this moment. Lin Sun was currently seriously injured and weak, but his Great Way luck was the best. If they could defeat him, they would definitely be able to seize the power of luck far beyond ordinary. Facing these gazes, Lin Sun only frowned and coughed, occasionally spitting out a mouthful of blood, as if he was seriously injured. He's too pretentious, Zhao Jingxian criticized in her mind. If I can obtain such an opportunity, not only will I be able to completely defeat Demon God Lin, but I'll also be able to seize his great Tao providence. It can be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, anyone can see this point. I wonder which lucky person will be the second to appear and get a great bargain, Li Qingping murmured in his heart. Suddenly, he felt his body being enveloped by an invisible force. The next moment, he appeared on the battlefield of luck. Li Qingping was slightly dazed. He felt like he had been struck by a pie from the sky. He felt an indescribable sense of joy. The heavens were watching over him. He held back his laughter and tried his best to control his joy, trying his best to maintain a cold and stern appearance. If others were to see that a peak figure like him would take advantage of Lin Sun's misfortune and bully the weak, it would not be honorable if word got out. It's actually him. Many of the small giants were envious as they secretly cursed Li Qingping for his luck to snatch first place. At the foot of the mountain, the spectators also sighed. They were unsure if Demon Lin was unlucky or lucky. If he was unlucky, he had survived Go Yenjin's self-destruction. Furthermore, he had obtained all the Great Way luck that originally belonged to Go Yenjin. But if he was lucky, the second to fight was Li Qingping. If it were anyone else, they might not have been able to bear it and would not have attacked him. But Li Qingping was different. This peak figure from the Tsangmei Taoist sect had made no attempt to conceal his killing intent towards Lin Sun long before he ascended the mountain. Under such circumstances, even a fool knew what choice Li Qingping would make. Indeed, Li Qingping's eyes were like lightning as he locked onto Lin Sun. His lips curled into a cold arc as he said indifferently, "Lin Sun, although your injuries are severe, you should know that this is a battle for luck. Within the rules, even if you are on the brink of death, you have to fight me on the battlefield today. P.S. Here's the 5th update. Today's harvest was huge. Monthly votes, support, messages, encouragement. Goldfish was extremely touched. Brothers and sisters, thank you so much." Chapter 1076. Everyone cursed Li Qingping for being shameless in their hearts. He might have put it nicely, but he was just trying to take advantage of others. Everyone knew that, so why did he have to be so hypocritical? Li Qingping did not know what they were thinking. Even if he did, he could not be bothered. He would be an idiot not to take advantage of others. When cultivating to seek the Tao, one had to fight for resources, fortuitous encounters, and fight for karmic luck of the heavens and the earth. Who would hand over such a great opportunity? Moreover, Li Qingping had sufficient reason to do so. His younger brother, Li Qinghuan, had been killed by Lin Sun. This reason alone was enough for him to not let go of the opportunity to suppress Lin Sun. "All right, since you want to fight, I can't refuse. Let's fight then." Lin Sun stood up shakily, took a deep breath, and rushed into the battlefield of Providence. The moment he landed, he could not help but pant rapidly, looking extremely weak. Seeing this, everyone could not help but sigh inwardly. Demon God Lin was really unlucky. He had been so domineering before, but now, he was so weak that it was unbearable to look at him. Seeing this, Li Qingping almost could not suppress the joy in his heart, but he said coldly, "Lin Sun, let me tell you in advance. In my eyes, there is only friend and foe. There is no difference in strength. I won't show any mercy when we fight later." Lin Sun nodded. "Of course. Then go to hell." Li Qingping attacked without hesitation. With a wave of his sleeve, purple Taoist light surged, turning into a dazzling purple hand that covered the sky and smacked down. In order to prevent any unforeseen events, he did not hold back and used his true strength to kill Lin Sun in one strike. Only then could he achieve the greatest deterrent effect. Even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit. From this point alone, Li Qingping did not let his guard down because of Lin Sun's injury. This was undoubtedly the combat demeanor of a true powerhouse. Lin Sun's figure flickered, and he narrowly avoided the attack. However, he staggered a little, making many people sweat for him. Boom! The palm print missed and exploded on the ground with astonishing momentum. However, Li Qingping's expression was a little ugly. It was a little embarrassing to not be able to kill the extremely weak demon god Lin in one strike. He took a deep breath and pressed his palm forward again. The dazzling palm print covered space and flowed with the glow of the Tao. Its might was clearly much stronger than before. Lin Sun's figure flashed and dodged in a thrilling manner. Although his figure was a little embarrassed, he was not hurt at all. Demon God Lin's combat sense is so strong. Many people clicked their tongues. The previous two dodges made many believe that Fiend Celestial Lin would be smashed to smithereens. Who knew that he would miraculously dodge it? Li Qingping, can you do it or not? Do you really need to put in so much effort just to deal with a severely injured dog or chicken? Jin Muan sneered and ridiculed. Li Qingping grunted coldly while his expression was gloomy, and killing intent surged in his heart. He suddenly took a deep breath and circulated a peerless Tao art. Boom! A bright golden phantom appeared above him. It was over 100 m tall, had 6 arms, and had a dignified appearance. It was like a god from the ancient legends, and it emitted a terrifying aura that shook the world. The vast Si Dao Sex Metal Spirit Phantasm Art. Some of the older figures were shocked. Was there a need to use such a powerful Dermic Dao to deal with an extremely weak Fiend Celestial Lin? Despicable! Shameless! Many people criticized silently. Fiend Celestial Lin was already so weak, yet he still used such a terrifying Dermic Dao art. It was clearly too much. If it were in the past, Zhao Jingxian would definitely be infuriated. However, she appeared especially calm at that moment. She even looked at Li Qingping with a hint of pity in her eyes. Boom! 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 The golden phantom surged up with 3 heads and 6 arms spinning. Its fingers were either clenched into fists, formed seals, formed sabers, or pressed into the air as a palm in an instant. The golden fist force, seal, finger force, and palm wind were like a torrential downpour that filled the void and poured down. Such a scene could be said to shake the heavens and the earth. Lin Sun's figure was immediately enveloped by it. Just as everyone thought that he was about to suffer a calamity and could not bear to watch, they were astonished to discover that Fiend Celestial Lin was not dead. He constantly dodged. His figure was in a sorry state as he staggered and swayed. However, he was always able to avoid the torrential bombardment by a hair's breadth. Everyone was dumbfounded. Wasn't his combat awareness and adaptability way too strong? He was still able to dodge despite being so injured. If he was not injured, how could Li Qingping be his match? Heh, Li Qingping, aren't you ashamed? That fellow is already so injured, and yet you can't do a thing to him. What a disgrace! Yu Lingkong scoffed as well. At that moment, Li Qingping's expression was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. Being mocked in such a manner infuriated him. Boom! He charged out explosively, and behind him, a bright and dazzling golden phantom waved its 6 arms, respectively developing 6 different types of Dao arts. This level of might was already sufficiently overbearing. Ignoring the fact that he could kill an extremely weak Fiend Celestial Lin, he could even put up a real fight against other minor magnate. However, what happened next left him somewhat dumbfounded. He saw that Fiend Celestial Lin, who could not be blocked or evaded, was about to be blasted to death. Who would have thought that a single palm strike from Lin Sun would resolve the overwhelming offensive force? Rumble! The sound of the collision resounded as the dissipating golden glow swept out with a rumble. A rain of light scattered. Lin Sun could not help but cough violently, but he still said in surprise, "Why is he so weak? Did you deliberately go easy on him?" Everyone was astonished as well, feeling greatly surprised. Could it be, as Fiend Celestial Lin said, that Li Qingping was being merciful and did not use his true strength? Mercy my ass! Li Qingping's lips twitched as he flew into a rage. He wished he could strangle Lin Sun to death. The most hateful thing was that at that moment, Jin Myun and Yu Lingkong mocked him again, saying that he could not even deal with a seriously injured Fiend Celestial Lin and that he should just commit suicide. Clang! Li Qingping attacked again, this time with a silver halberd. At that moment, even Ah Lu could not stand it any longer. He sneered loudly, "Look, you're even using the Imperial weapon. This is the first time I've seen such a funny thing. Bah! How shameful!" "Shut up!" Li Qingping could no longer hold back his anger and shouted. Then, he brandished his halberd and charged at Lin Sun. Compared to before, this strike was undoubtedly more terrifying. Bang! However, just when he was halfway to Lin Sun, a broken blade suddenly swept across the sky, shining with cold light. Li Qingping's pupils shrank, and the scene of Go Yanjun being defeated flashed in his mind. His heart palpitated. Did Fiend Celestial Lin want to use his trump card at all costs to destroy himself? Not daring to be negligent, Li Qingping turned from offense to defense. He swung the silver halberd and developed a bright light curtain in front of him. But the broken blade seemed to lose its strength halfway and fell to the ground with a clang. All the people present were stunned. Time seemed to stand still. Li Qingping, who was ready to attack, had performed his defensive means perfectly. But what he got was such an embarrassing scene. His face suddenly turned red, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. He was frightened by a seriously injured and weak guy. Outside the arena, roaring laughter broke the awkward silence. However, the laughter was like poisonous thorns stabbing into Li Qingping's heart. With a livid face, Li Qingping stared at Lin Sun, who was gasping in the distance. He tried his best to control his anger and said word by word, "I will let you die miserably." Bang! The silver halberd danced in the air, splashing hundreds of millions of lights, making the world roar and the void explode. Everyone realized that Li Qingping was completely enraged. The might of this strike caused the hearts of some of the minor heavyweights to jerk, and they were extremely moved. Clang! On the ground, the broken blade trembled as if it was struggling to rush up, but it couldn't. Everyone sighed in their hearts. Was Fiend Celestial Lin so weak that he couldn't even control his own treasure? You are at the end of your rope. Why are you still struggling? Die. Li Qingping's face was cold. He had rushed to Lin Sun, and the silver halberd, wrapped in waterfall-like light, chopped down. However, halfway through the attack, his eyes suddenly popped out and glared at Lin Sun. "You!" Before he finished his words, his body suddenly split from the top of his head, as if he was cut in half by a sharp knife. This sudden scene caused everyone to be horrified. Their pupils dilated, and they were shocked to the point their hearts almost stopped. What happened just now? Plop! Plop! Li Qinghuan's body fell to the ground in two halberds, staining the ground red and turning it into a pool of blood. The silver halberd in his hand also fell to the ground with a clang, which was particularly harsh in the dead silence. Was he dead? The audience was silent and their scalps were numb. Most of them didn't see how Lin Sun attacked just now. Whoosh! At this time, the broken blade flew back to Lin Sun's palm, which attracted everyone's attention. They suddenly realized something, and their expressions changed. At this time, Lin Sun coughed violently and sighed, "Although I'm seriously injured, I can still fight. What's more, my treasure is controlled by the power of the soul. Why are you so careless? Fortunately, this is the immortal mountain. You still have a chance to live. Be careful next time." As soon as these words came out, many people's lips twitched. It sounded like a sarcastic remark. Jinmyun, Yu Lingkong and others were already shocked and doubtful. They even doubted whether Lin Sun was really injured. This guy is so insidious. Thinking of the scene of the broken blade falling to the ground just now, many people already knew that Lin Sun was definitely tricking Li Qingping on purpose in order to numb him. To be able to defeat an opponent despite being seriously injured, this guy is too strong. Some of the smaller tycoons felt their hearts churning. From the beginning, people thought that Lin Sun was doomed, but the result caught everyone off guard. It was absurd and horrifying. Li Qingping was a peerless figure. Even if he fought with demon god Lin in his peak state, he could at least fight fiercely for a while. But this time, he was killed in confusion, which made people speechless. Chapter 1077. Li Qingping's defeat was really unjust. From the beginning of the battle, although he didn't neglect Lin Sun, he had subconsciously regarded Lin Sun as a seriously injured person. In short, he seriously underestimated Lin Sun. So much so that when he was killed, he was still in a daze. "Lin Sun, you're despicable." When the battle ended and Lin Sun returned to the Taoist altar on the top of the mountain, Li Qingping's exasperated and furious roar suddenly sounded in the field. Different from Go Yanjun, who was eliminated because he violated the rules, Li Qingping was not eliminated and was resurrected by the rules of the immortal mountain. At this moment, he was trembling with anger, standing on the top of the mountain and roaring. However, although he was resurrected, His breath was extremely weak, like a lamp running out of oil. Everyone sighed endlessly, and they understood Li Qingping's rage very well. If it was anyone else that was killed in such a careless manner, that person would probably go mad as well. Lin Sun also sighed and said with pity, "Li Qingping, you've lost. Why do you have to be so stubborn? If I were you, I would definitely seize the time to restore my strength, in case others take advantage of the situation." Take advantage of the situation. Everyone's eyes became strange. Didn't Li Qingping also want to take advantage of the situation before? But in the end, he was reduced to such a situation. The most subtle thing was that Li Qingping was even weaker than Lin Sun at this time. If someone challenged him at this time, it was indeed no different from taking advantage of the situation. Lin Sun's words also made many small giants look at Li Qingping stealthily, as if they were staring at their prey. Li Qingping felt uneasy all over and his face kept changing. He was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He never thought that he would be reduced to such a situation. Wait and see. He stared at Lin Sun with resentment and then withdrew his eyes. He took a deep breath, sat cross-legged and began to recover. Go for wool and come home shorn. Haha. In the distance, Alu was laughing wildly. His voice made Li Qingping so angry that he almost had a stroke. He made up his mind to find a chance to kill this barbarian in the future. But very quickly, Li Qingping's body stiffened, and his head almost exploded. Because the next person to appear was the barbarian, Aluka. He quickly lowered his head and looked down, praying in his heart that this barbarian would not do something like looting a burning house. Unexpectedly, as soon as Alufa stepped onto the battlefield, he shouted impatiently, "Li Qingping, get over here!" Everyone's expression changed, and the corners of their lips twitched. This really was the heavenly Tao, and retribution was coming. Li Qingping was going to be unlucky again. Lin Sun almost burst out laughing. Li Qingping raised his head with great difficulty. His face was livid and stiff as he said word by word, "Is it fun to bully the weak? Do you dare to fight me after I recover my strength?" Alu spat on the ground and shouted, "I like to bully the weak, otherwise how can I be your grandfather? Get down here." "You!" Li Qingping nearly stomped his foot in anger. "You what? Grandson, is this how you address your grandpa?" Alu yelled. The whole audience clicked their tongues. This barbarian was really stupid. No matter what, Li Qingping was a little giant at the top. Wasn't he afraid of offending him completely? "I admit defeat in this battle." Li Qingping took a few deep breaths to restrain his anger. His voice seemed to be squeezed out of his teeth. After that, his face was cold and gloomy to the extreme. He admitted defeat. Everyone was shocked. No one had expected that a top powerhouse would admit defeat in such a humiliating manner. Coward! Trash! Coward! A man without balls! On the battlefield, Aluka was very dissatisfied, and he spouted nonsense. Li Qingping was already aggrieved enough. At this moment, he almost couldn't help fainting. The third match ended so hastily, which made people not know whether to laugh or cry. Originally, Li Qingping thought that he could seize some time to recover his strength. He never thought that Yi Chen, who appeared in the fourth match, would also challenge him with a smile. All of a sudden, he was dumbfounded. The others also looked strange. They wanted to laugh but dared not. It was very hard to hold it in. "Yi Chen, you are a figure from Ziwei Divine Mountain and have the title of Sword Devil. Isn't it too shameless to do this?" Li Qingping trembled with anger. Yi Chen said with a smile, "What I cultivate is to follow my heart. I don't care what others think. Didn't you say before that within the rules, there are only enemies, no strong or weak? Why are you slapping your own face now?" Li Qingping was almost choked. Too much grievance had accumulated in his heart, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. "I admit defeat." Li Qingping's voice was full of grief and indignation. It resounded through the world and moved those who heard it. Jin Myun and Yu Lingkong couldn't help but feel sad. It was so tragic. Li Qingping was also a little giant among the top figures and had an extraordinary identity. But he was defeated by Lin Sun first, and then he was forced to admit defeat twice in a row. If this was spread out, he would become the laughing stock of the world. At this point, Li Qingping was also eliminated and stopped in the second round. His ranking could only hover around the 18th place at most. This demon god Lin is simply a maleficent star. Whoever goes against him will be unlucky. Someone muttered. Yeah, first there was Go Yanjun who violated the rules and was expelled. Then there was Li Qingping who was eliminated in a muddle. It's really strange. Many people sighed with emotion and looked at Lin Sun in a different way. Don't make irresponsible remarks. This is not luck. Isn't demon god Lin seriously injured now? Maybe it will be his turn to repeat Li Qingping's mistake. Someone snorted coldly. As if to confirm this person's words, the fifth little giant also directly challenged Lin Sun. This person was a descendant of the ancient Bai Fong clan. His name was Bai Donglu. He wore a golden feather battle suit and looked extraordinary. Lin Sun was very straightforward this time. Without any nonsense, he came to the battlefield. I'm different from Li Qingping. I won't show any mercy. You should be careful. Bai Donglu looked indifferent with a kind of restrained pride. I've won 2 games in a row. If I can continue to win this one, I should be able to enter the next round. Lin Sun's face was still very pale, but what he said made Bai Donglu frown. He said, "Don't you think too much?" Lin Sun took a deep breath and pretended to be firm. I just want to tell you that I will try my best to win this battle. In other words, you should be careful. Bai Donglu's face darkened. He felt it absurd that a seriously injured person dared to boast so shamelessly. Cut the crap. Let's fight. Bai Donglu roared and soared into the sky. His skinny body emitted a blazing golden light, like a golden thunderbolt that streaked across the sky. Everyone held their breath and watched nervously. Everyone could see that Lin Sun was seriously injured. But at the same time, if he tried his best to attack, his counterattack would be extremely amazing. Boom! Bai Donglu's power was extremely fierce. He held a giant hammer flowing with thunder and lightning and smashed it at Lin Sun. The void burst into disorder. Lin Sun stood there without moving. The blood and qi around his body burned like a clear divine flame that illuminated the entire sky. His expression was firm and ruthless, and it seemed like he was going to risk his life. Clang! The bright and illusory broken blade struck out, making a clear sound. It was silence cut. With a clang, this fierce blow was resolved by Bai Donglu's hammer. He sneered. Do you think I will be fooled like Li Qingping? You underestimate me too much. Boom! As he spoke, his figure was extremely fast, like a golden rainbow. His whole body was glowing, and the thunder and lightning giant hammer in his hand pressed down on the void. In an instant, it was like a thunder tribulation, pouring down on the battlefield. Everyone gasped. None of the small giants who could enter the second round of the battle was weak. Compared with Li Qingping, Bai Donglu was not inferior, even stronger. He was calm and experienced in both offense and defense. Obviously, he treated Lin Sun as a formidable enemy and never underestimated him. At the same time, Lin Sun's performance almost made people's jaws drop to the ground. Instead of retreating, he brazenly confronted Bai Donglu. Boom! With the sound of collision, the two fought fiercely. In a flash, they had fought hundreds of times, completely head-on, fierce and ruthless. He was suppressed immediately. Everyone looked as if they had seen a ghost. Soon, an unexpected scene happened. In the battle, Bai Donglu was shaken and staggered back. His whole right arm was convulsing, and he gasped because of the pain. You're not hurt?" Bai Donglu cried. Bai Fong was famous for its strength and speed in ancient times. Moreover, he was still in his peak state, but in the collision, he was a little overwhelmed. I said, I'm fighting desperately. Lin Sun was very serious. In the end, a trace of blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Humph! Bai Dongluo's face was gloomy and his aura surged. In an instant, he was surrounded by thunder and lightning, and even his eyes were filled with lightning. His entire being was dazzling like a son of God bathed in thunder and lightning. This was the secret method of Bai Feng, which was extremely amazing. If it were other practitioners, they would be directly killed by the thunder and lightning. Even the top figures could not resist it. However, when Lin Sun raised his hand, the broken blade swept through the air and performed the life and death cut. With an incredible flash of the blade, a wound was torn on Bai Dongluo's body and blood splashed. Even if you're fighting desperately, you can't be so strong, can you? Bai Dongluo shouted again, shocked and angry, and couldn't believe it. Everyone outside the field was also shocked and doubtful. Indeed, Lin Sun didn't look like a serious injury at all. He was even more powerful than a healthy person. Lin Sun coughed and frowned. Well, is it because you're too weak? Bai Dongluo's face suddenly darkened and he shouted. His body suddenly turned into a three-legged Bai Feng bird, bathed in golden thunder and lightning, and spread its wings to attack. Every blow was like a lightning punishment, covering the battlefield with boundless horror. But just a moment later, he was hit by the life and death cut again. His chest was almost broken, and a shocking scar was dripping with blood. Bai Dongluo flapped his wings in a pathetic manner to avoid being killed by the slash. This time, he was completely enraged after encountering danger. He yelled hoarsely, Fiend God Lin, you're a big liar. You've been scamming me all along.